are able to main purpose of report cards. That's why we do it. That's why we do it for schools too, by the way. So for the Fitzroy, we have four contributors to the report card, to the grade. We have the physical and the chemical, and we'll see some of that consisting of the pH, turbidity, sulfite. I won't go into the detail because this is all online, and you can actually see what makes up the grade. We have nutrients, we have the toxicants, and we have ecology. Last year was when we first introduced two. We did fish and we did habitat last year, which is really exciting because a report card based on just water quality is very tricky because we know that the ecosystem needs to be looked at, the impacts of water quality on the ecosystem. How you look at it, as we said, we have the ecology, the toxicants, the nutrients, and the physical chemical. We've separated the freshwater and saline area. But we also look at the colors of the icon. So when we see the colors that fall across the reporting of the document, you've got the green A down to a red E. And in between, of course, you have the light green, the orange, and the dark orange. And this is how they look. So A is excellent, E is fail. It's just trying to adjust your eyes when you look at the report card. Yeah. So and we also have some confidence ratings. All right. So where is this drum roll? This is drum roll. So I got to figure out. Oh, sorry. Maybe it is the drum roll. No, actually not. That's not a drum roll yet. Sorry. Doesn't give you the grade yet. Actually, no, I won't mention. But that's the report card now. It's actually a thicker report card, and I'll explain it later on. Eva and Liz actually have done a fantastic job with adding more information that is relevant for all of us for this report card. But there it is. The report card for the overall basin is B. And you might, first question is, yeah, okay, B is good, right? And it's the same as last. So we haven't really decreased, and we haven't, there you go. So that's the plot of the report card. Basically, when you look at the Fitzroy Basin, it's between a C and a B, C and B, C and a B. But we shouldn't be, how do I say that? What's the term for that? We shouldn't take it for granted because I remembered when we did it for North Bay, 10 years, we had a B, a C, a B, and C. Suddenly the major floods came, it went down to a D. The media went crazy. They loved it. You know, when they see something which is bad news, they love it. But from a D, it slowly went back to a C, and now it's back to a B. Report cards actually reflect resilience of a system. And it usually is associated with rainfall, of course, because why? Rainfall carries with it what we put on our catchment. So whatever we put on land, it will make its way to the waterways. It will be reflected in a report card grade. So as I said, it's driven by hydrology, and usually there's a very good correlation between rainfall and surface water interaction. So you have rainfall and stream flow. We look at that. These are graphs that you will see on the website where you see the correlation in the different catchments, sub-catchments, and you'll see that rainfall is really correlated with stream flow and correlated by what we put on land. So if you put good things on land, there's no pollution, then it's okay. But if there's severe erosion, sedimentation, nutrient toxicants, they will find their way either to the waterway, to the river, or to the rivers, or to the estuaries, and eventually out to the river, which Barbara will talk more about it. All right, so, oh, sorry, I gotta go back. Drum roll. I need some drum roll. This is it. Sorry. So you can just look at it, and you look at the greens and the yellows. They're good. Yellow's fair. Green's good. There's one red. It's like a game. Spot the red. And you see the red in the estuary, and that icon refers to ecology, right? So as we said before, and I think we could explain it a bit later, when it doesn't rain as much, and Nicole is here, who's our expert in fish, barramundi, which is an indicator that we use for fish, will be affected by the lack of flow coming out of the river. The reproductive patterns, their distribution patterns are very much affected by flow. So when there's not much rainfall and we didn't have much in the last year's sampling, then barramundi gets affected, and so do microinvertebrates. So it's usually the ecology that will eventually reflect the whole of the system. That's why we got so excited last year when, as a partnership, we decided to incorporate ecology into the report card. All right. So as I said, what you could also see in the current report card which is in front of you, and thanks again to Miss and Eva for this, is we've also put in some of the catchment snapshots. So I'll show some here. I won't go into all of them otherwise. So there's some slides here for halide, some for comet, the upper ISAC, and to continue to be a segue for Barbara's talk later on, we put one for the H3. So this is what you'll see in the catchment snapshot. So I'm using halide as an example. Halide's a B now. When you look at the trend for halide, usually a B, C, B, C. So it's pretty good. So it's maintained its C rating. If you look at then the breakdown of the different indicators, it's doing well. So okay with nutrients, except for total nitrogen, and then doing well with toxicants, but then have a look at it. Macros, and then to some extent the habitat is not doing well. So you get this information, and then when you click on that, Eva, they could go straight into the actual score, right? Yeah, you can download it, and yeah. So definitely use the interactive report card. So as a snapshot, halide did show improvement in salinity. So when you look at the trend, it did have an A last year. It's still pretty good, B this year. Sulfate is good. When you look at the trend for sulfate, so CD, CD, and then suddenly, 3 report cards ago, it went up to a B, and then, you know, which is good. It's good story, good news story. And then for copper, it's the same, similar trend, very low, even E, and then went up to a C, and then so it's good news story report cards. For halide, not in general actually. When you look at comet, comet's a B, and when you look at the trend, it's actually a good trend for comet. Always has been in that B, and you could actually look at the breakdown of the indicators. That it's actually doing well. Once again, it's the ecology that is not as good. I mean, it's not failing, but it's fair, basically, the yellow. And that's reflected here then in terms of the summary icon for ecology. So comet snapshot very quickly. You have turbidities kind of stable. You know, look at it in the past. It used to be not as good, but you know, it's B now for the last 4 report cards. When you look at this is copper, which is really good. It's gone to a B this year. We'll get excited about results, and then we'll talk more about the whys later on, okay? Because we will rely on you to maintain those Bs. The exciting bit too is that the freshwater catfish was spotted here in. So you've got some exciting facts in the report card as well of what has been spotted, and so maybe some of the waterway, your eyes, and they're there. To the catchment, to the basin. Upper ISAC snapshot another B, so you could understand why the report card overall actually stays at a B. The trend is more or less the same, has been fair, but then it's maintained the B this year. And then when you look again at the breakdown for that, so you look at once again, there's some issues here with toxicants, once again with the macros, and here in terms of conductivity for ISAC. So if you happen to put the dot and the upper ISAC in your in our mental data, then you'll understand the upper ISAC, and then you'll get more information. And so why, when you look at electrical conductivity, from an A down to a C this year? It's by far one of the bigger dips. And then same with aluminium, but aluminium was also at C last year anyway, so it's maintained at C. It never went up to a B this time. Copper is the same, went down again. But nutrients are okay. So nutrients have maintained into a B. Once again, no rain, right? So the estuary, we're now heading over to Barbara in preparation for Barbara's presentation on the marine side. So it starts at the Fitzroy River Barrage at Rockhampton and winds its way down for 56 kilometers before it reaches Catchments, where we will be tomorrow. So when you look at the estuary, it fluctuates between B's and C's. This year, though, it's a C. And so that's the trees. And when you look at where it has done, it's really in the dissolved phosphorus, but also here in terms of the barramundi. And there's a detailed explanation there on the report card relating to what I said before in terms of flows that Nicole actually has some QA for us. And we could talk more about that later on in the panel because Nicole will stay on. And when you look at the snapshot, sorry, this is the barramundi story then, look at the fluctuation of the barramundi here from DE, so it went up to an A in 2013-14 here as well, two report cards ago, and then has dipped down to a D and has not recovered. So associated with flows, which we could talk more about later on. And then for chlorophyll, which is really an indication of nutrients, it's actually for the first time, the estuary reflected a C grade, which is fair, but it has always been a B for a while. And usually, it's where the ISP discussed about this, because when there's very little flows coming from the catchment, normally your nutrients would be coming from the catchment, right? And nutrients then trigger chlorophyll. But we are seeing a trigger of chlorophyll here, and presumably from some nitrogen source coming into the estuary. But we could have a look at that and relate that to the marine. But slight decline in chlorophyll. It's still a fair value. Sorry, so I'm just going to synthesize with a. Am I okay? I'm fine. All right, cool. The overall ecosystem health for the Fitzroy Basin waterways remains a B. Good. So a big pack here. Although we haven't had flows. I was going to say, we haven't had flows. So there's time for us to prepare the catchment, okay? During the past 14 years, the overall grade for the Fitzroy Basin has been relatively stable. And I'll talk about the stability and a little bit of the concept of resilience later on. The report cards do give us a snapshot of waterway health for the year of the sampling, so 23-24, that gives you a snapshot. Trend analysis is another different kettle of fish, but we really have to be detailed about trend analysis. And we associate that with what particular factors cause the trend to happen. The results reflect interactions, as we know, climate, the flow, the mobilization of salt, so sea sulfide and species changing, nutrients, chlorophyll, sediments in the landscape, as well as human activities and any consequent changes to the ecology over time. So the indicators for ecology is very important for us in terms of report card. It is an individual, so it is that whilst when you look, if you look to this graph at the overall basis, trying to maintain it to be, stabilized. But then you look at those catchment sites, individual site levels, that's where you see these fluctuations. That's why having those catchment snapshots in this report card. And more so, click on it in the online report card, you'll go down to the detail of the site. So in general, when you go back to our four groups of indicators, physical and chemical indicators generally met the desired levels. And this category was very good. So we've actually done pretty good in terms of physical and chemical. That's ECs, sulfate, pH. The nutrient indicators, mostly good. There are some that are fair. I don't think we've encountered, I'm just trying to recall it, a long time to reflect on whether we had a red before. I don't think so. I don't think we've flagged it. In terms of ecology, this is the one, decreased across the basin, except for the upper ISAC, halide, and the upper Dawson, due to the lower macroinvertebrate scores, which are influenced by medium to long-term accumulation of reduced water quality and habitat pressures bear in mind one of our criteria for college habitat. Just the presence of and the toxicant values improved in all catchments except for the Upper Isaac and Lower Dawson. Copper and aluminium have been detected in lower concentrations this year throughout the basin. Great news, and this has resulted in the improvement in scores and grades. So that's the synthesis of the report card. I've got two more slides, and I don't think you're allowed to ask me questions now anyway, because we have a panel. So I'm going to use up some time for these two slides. This is a placeholder to say that the report card that you see in front of you, that you have online, is more than just a piece of paper that shows grades. It actually is deeper than that, because as Tim has indicated, it reflects a partnership that is special that we have here. It reflects that connection with the waterways and the community, because one of the things that a community would love to see is not, nutrients or sulfates or toxicants. They would love to be able to fish, for example. They'd love to be able to swim. They'd love to be able to hang around beside the crocodile. They'd love to be having that connection with the waterway. That's what the report card is all about. And it's not just, the number of data that has been put in, although that's amazing, because Eva, what was it again? We talked about how many how many samples per sites and how many sites done several times a year. So there is a lot of data synthesis. There's a lot of rigor behind the report. So we should be proud of that as well. And I know the ISP make sure that the rigor is behind that, because we are hoping that the report card can be used more for management implications. So if you have any questions about the report card, by all means, approach Eva, Josh, and if there are questions that you want the ISP to deliberate on, by all means, that is there, that service is there for you. But the report card also, as I said, is a community outreach program. It's a very powerful communication tool. It reflects a partnership that is really an amazing partnership. Credit to all of us, as Tim has indicated. It also reflects that I said the connectivity. And the reason why connectivity and connecting catchments is very important. The only way we could achieve resilience, and resilience is such a big passion for me at the moment, because when you talk about resilience of waterways and rivers, it's not just about the fish and the bugs. It's not just about the toxicants and the nutrients. It's really about the resilience of the economies that rely on our waterways. It's the resilience of the communities. It's the preservation of our cultural values. And you've heard that when you got welcomed to the country. That basically that's the concept of resilience. That at the moment we're getting a good report card because it didn't rain that much last year. If there is maybe 3 major floods next year, we might go down. But what would be a special story would be how this system would how the system would cope with that decline and then cope better, in fact. So resist that decline and transform into the system that is a resilient system for all of our values, whether it's cultural, economic, or ecosystem. So there are other things that are associated with the report card, the waterway stories that Myth and Eva talked about, the marine report that we will hear from Barbara later on, the human dimensions that I think Myth and Eva used some of the questions in the Mentimeter, Fitzroy Water Watch, which is a community outreach program. Then we have also the grading methods explained. Eva, that's Eva's specialty. And of course, the most recent report card. You see these amazing ladies here who have helped a lot in making this happen. And once again, and this is a segue to tomorrow for those who are coming to Keppel. And maybe just to entice those who are not planning to go yet, just look at this. It's an amazing place. We have an amazing basin. It's a hard-working basin. I always say that. Fitzroy is one of the hardest working basins here in Australia, but we are doing well. for having a report card of a B, I think we should congratulate ourselves. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva, and thank you for keeping the time. That was brilliant. Yeah, we will have a panel at the end, so any questions, please write them down. But we're going to transition across to our marine report. And I'm going to welcome Dr. Barbara Robson to talk about the marine monitoring program, which is where we get our data for our marine report, which is tucked into the back of the report cards on the table. Dr. Barbara Robson is one of our independent science panel members. She's also a principal research scientist at the Australian Institute of Marine Science, AIMS. And for anyone who works in the reef, you might like to know that she was a key contributor to the eReef's marine models, which is very impressive. And joining her online, we will also have Angus Thompson, who's a coordinator for the inshore coral monitoring program for AIMS. He's a marine biologist, and his interest is in coral communities and developing metrics to communicate their condition. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you. So I'm very glad to be here, especially after a delayed flight this morning, but I managed to get here in time. Yes. As I was introduced, I'm Barbara Robson from the Australian Institute of Marine Science. I'm a member of the Fitzroy Partnership for the Health Independent Science Panel. And I also lead a team in AIMS that is, leads the water quality component of the marine monitoring program. I personally have a small contribution to the MMP. So here I'm presenting on behalf of my team and our partners at Shopwater and JCU and so forth. And of course the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. So the marine monitoring program has been conducted in the Great Barrier Reef near shore waters since 2005. It's was instituted to keep track basically of the impact of terrestrial water quality on our valuable marine ecosystems. So we have seen a range of impacts of poor water quality in these inshore ecosystems. They affect the values of these systems as well as our recreational fishing and tourism values. And so monitoring water quality in these inshore areas is essential so that we can understand those impacts, understand where we need to take action and how water quality interacts with other pressures in this system. So the marine monitoring program was designed to help us to understand when and where river flows and floodwaters affect inshore marine waters and what pollutants are carried by those waters, how extreme events and multiple pressures over many years affect important Great Barrier Reef ecosystems, and whether habitats are recovering based on long-term trends. Those long-term trends do take long-term monitoring to be able to pick up because, as you know, our rivers in Queensland are very variable. One year we may have a huge flood and then we may not get another one for a few years. So picking up against that background of high variability, what's happening in terms of long-term trends takes consistent monitoring. So what do we monitor? Well, we monitor water quality and a range of indicators of water quality, including nutrient concentrations, pesticides, chlorophyll, and so forth. We monitor seagrass because seagrass is a key habitat. It's very important to fisheries and to wildlife in the area, such as dugongs, for example. And we monitor coral because if we have a healthy coral system, then that again supports a whole range of other values and ecosystem components. And within each of those, we look at both indicators of the current condition of coral and seagrasses and indicators of their resilience and their reproductive ability to spring back after disturbances. And as you see, we monitor these things all up and down the Great Barrier Reef. And the results feed into a whole range of different policies and processes. So they feed into regional report cards, as we see here in the Fitzroy, but also into water quality guidelines and objectives, water quality targets and spatial prioritisation, Queensland Environmental Protection Authorities, Reef Authority incident responses, and so on and so forth. So here though today we're interested as Eva mentioned, the Fitzroy is one of the largest and hardest working rivers in the country, and certainly in the Great Barrier Reef. There's a lot of agriculture and mineral industry, a lot going on in the Fitzroy catchment, and a lot of water flows through that river. This is a satellite image showing the start of a flood event. When we think about the waters of the Fitzroy and the Great Barrier Reef, obviously we are concerned with what's happening in the immediate vicinity of the river, Keppel Bay, which we'll get to see a bit of tomorrow with the snorkeling and diving, and the estuary, but also the impacts further afield. Because when we have a big flood in the Fitzroy, the waters go hundreds of kilometres up to the north. And the Fitzroy, after the Burdekin, has the second largest marine footprint when it floods. So the next couple of slides, I just want to mention that these are the results as published in the 2022-23 Marine Monitoring Program report. The 23-24 one hasn't quite been released yet. That's going to happen within the next month, and if anybody's interested in seeing a lot more detail of this year's Marine Monitoring Program results, I can send you a link to register to attend online the MMP event in November. This is the historical trend of the water quality results, and here I'm doing what Eva said scientists often do and showing a lot of graphs. But as you can see, there was a gap for a few years when there was a program redesign in 2015 that was to enable more frequent monitoring, which was statistically necessary at some other sites, and the Fitzroy got dropped off for a few years. But fortunately, about 4 years ago, the Fitzroy component was refunded, so we resumed water quality monitoring in Fitzroy. The coral monitoring continued for and as you can see, there's a range of different measures. We see at the top there the long-term results for the water quality index over time, and it's been pretty stable on the whole over the time we've been monitoring. This is an index that's designed to look for long-term trends and try to even out some of the year-to-year variations, whereas the index at the bottom, which we're only presenting since the new design was instituted and monitoring restarted in the Fitzroy, is designed to pick up more the year-to-year variations. And I guess there's a few things there. You can see that nitrate isn't meeting targets, but on the whole, water quality in our Fitzroy marine and estuarine waters is not doing too bad. Second component, this component's led by Len McKenzie and Catherine Collier in drop water. They measure seagrass, both intertidal and subtidal seagrasses. As you can see, it's a fairly labour-intensive piece of work, going out regularly to look at how the seagrass is doing, not just the cover, but its reproductive status and so forth. And this is how it has been doing since 2005, 2006. And this is the result from last year's report, 2022-23 report. I just got a sneak preview of the results for this year, and there's good news. We have seen a big improvement in the last year in the seagrasses, but that's not been published yet, so I haven't got it up on the slide. But yeah, you can see over the years, seagrass hasn't been doing too well in this region, and it does vary from site to site and from year to year. In years where there's a big flood event, you often get damage due to sediment deposition, especially in those. I can't answer a lot of questions about the seagrass because it's not my area, but I can direct you to last year's report, or again send you a link for registering to hear about this year's report in November. And hopefully Angus, my coral colleague, is online and ready to go.
I am here. Can anyone hear me? This is the question. Hello, hello.
Angus, can you
I'm
hear us?
speaking. I can hear. Can anyone hear me?
Oh, Braden said he can hear Angus online.
Braden, so here Angus online.
And I. Can you hear me now? No? Yes, Eva? Eva can hear me? I can't hear the room now. Eva's on mute. I can start now. Okay. Just how are the slides going to get progressed? That's all I need to know.
Hi, Angus.
Hi.
Hear
Right.
me?
Yes.
But I can't speak at the same time as you, so yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Right. So I'm Angus Thompson. I work up at the Australian Institute of Marine Science, and I'll cover off a little bit on what we've been seeing in the corals out in the bay. Can we go to that next slide? Oh, and I'm talking obviously on behalf of Johnson Davidson and Cassie, my immediate team. This is where we monitor the reefs in Keppel Bay, and this is part, as Barbara was saying, of a much larger program where we monitor reefs up and down the coast. Next slide. Our monitoring is primarily done by photo transects that we take along permanent sites that we have marked out on the reefs. If you see some little pieces of star picket or something in the reefs when you go on your field trip, that might be us. And these transects let us build up a picture of the coral community. one of the key indicators is just coral cover itself. But we also look at how fast the coral changes to get an idea of its recovery. But we also look at the number of juvenile corals to see that there's recruitment coming in, akin to seedlings in the forest. And we look at macroalgae as a competitor to the corals. Next slide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present a lot of graphs, but they're the same graph over and over again. So I'll just orientate you to it. This graph here, you can see the coloured dots. That's the index, which is the report card score. So orange being a D. When you're looking through the different, and as I go through this through time, I'll highlight the different indicators to give a bit of an impression of what's going on. So first off, I've got in purple there is coral cover. And you can see back in 2005, it was really high. It was getting a good. We didn't have an index score at that point. It started in 2006, and unfortunately in 2006 there was a severe bleaching event, and that really knocked down the coral cover. Just tab through one more iteration of this slide. It's got some animation. Thanks. That'll do. So then after that bleaching event, we had quite a wet period. And the big one was the 2011 flood of the Fitzroy, and that knocked coral cover back again. Actually, the fresh water itself killed some of the corals sort of in the shallow areas to the south of Keppel Island. And then over that whole period, everything was ratcheting down, but we were getting a few storms coming through. We had disease and that freshwater flooding. After things dried out, we got a bit of recovery occurring, and you can see coral cover went up quite nicely, but that wasn't occurring at all reefs. And if we just take another little, yep, and one more.
Angus, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We're having issues in the room. So we're just going to switch over to speakers. So if we could pause for 1 sec and try and switch those. Scott is over here like a DJ in the booth. Can you try and speak again, Angus?
Okay, speaking.
Can everyone at the back hear? Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, right. And so what we saw in that drier period after the rainy times, we got coral cover increasing, but that cover wasn't consistently increasing at all reefs. And that the photo that you can see there is at Pelican Island, where there was a lot of macroalgae and the corals were very slow to recover. And if you click again, yeah, and so on the other end of the spectrum, out at the furthest offshore reef, out at Barren Island, the corals just came back really, really well. And in 2023, they were in great condition. Okay, next slide. However, just a spoiler alert, and as Barbara was saying, you can find out more about this in our science forum in November, but 2024 was really hot. And so that bleaching event we saw at the beginning, we've seen even more loss of coral. So stay tuned for the results on that. That's just a little snippet of things to come. Okay, next slide. Now I'm going to go through a couple of the sort of indicators that are showing a bit of the resilience story. Back there in 2005, macroalgae was pretty low on the reefs, and so the score at that point was actually in that band of 0.4 to 0.6, which is a C, a moderate score. And then it plummeted. After the bleaching event, macroalgae cover went up on all the reefs. There was a little reprieve around the floods because the floodwaters actually killed the algae as well, but it rapidly came back. And now we're in this situation where at a lot of the reefs, as you saw in that shot of middle Pelican Island earlier, then there's been ongoing high levels of macroalgae. Okay, next slide. And that's just what, yeah, and so that was Middle Island, but we'll see that again later. And then there's two more, the cover change indicator in light blue there and the juvenile corals. And you can see that the juveniles have always been fairly low in the region. And that's probably just a normal state for reefs in the far south there that are quite isolated from other major areas of coral. But this cover change, it also declined quite dramatically over that wet period. And then as the corals were recovering, so the rate of their recovery was improving as well, to the point where last year it was right on that border of a C and D, but it was getting up towards expectations and okay sort of grade. Okay, next slide. And just to reiterate the influence of those wet periods, when we look at the actual change in the indicator score from one year to the next, and taking out the places where the score went down because of a disturbance event like the flood or a bleaching event, then as discharge on those higher, wetter years, you tend to have more changes in the going backwards. And then the really strong improvement is in the dry years. So that sort of gives an idea of the influence of just variation in rainfall and what's coming out of the river on the recovery potential of the corals across the bay. Okay, next slide. That's what I said. Yep, right. And so now just a snapshot of the corals across the bay, and you can see these are the report card sort of grades. You can see out at Barren Island, it was good at 2 meters depth. The left-hand ones are in the shallows, and the right-hand dots at each reef are slightly deeper at 5 meters below tide. So out wide, Barren Island, you can see a picture of that on the right there. The corals are looking really good. Conversely, Middle Island there in the middle in the bay, that was really high coral cover back before the 2005 bleaching, and it's just been in decline ever since. And we've got a lot of algae. There's two sorts of algae there. There's the sort of goldy coloured stuff, which can get quite tall in summer. And also in amongst the coral, there's a flatter, spongy looking stuff. And what that algae does, it competes with the coral, it occupies space, and it really slows down the recovery. Okay, next slide. So the take-home message is that the corals have been impacted by bleaching, floods and storms. And in those dry years, there has been recovery, which is a good thing. However, we do note that that recovery is a little limited when the Fitzroy River is pumping out a lot of nutrients and sediments and just fresh water. But also that at reefs where there's the macroalgae have taken hold, that recovery has been very slow. So all those reefs sort of through the Keppel Island and inshore around Pelican, and these both point to water quality as limiting coral recovery. So it really reinforces the need for an ongoing focus on water quality within the catchment. That's pretty much it for me, I think. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angus. We're gonna.
Sorry to interrupt, Martina. Yeah, I just wanted to mention all of our colleagues who, who are part of the marine monitoring program, in particular Renee Gruber and JD Waterhouse and their team who do the inshore water quality monitoring, and as well as the seagrass team that I've mentioned before, and the team at the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority.
Thank you, Barbara. We're gonna. Okay, good. We're gonna move to a science panel question discussion time. So now is a really good time while I'm introducing everyone to get up and stretch your legs and get a drink, because we're not going to have an afternoon tea for another hour. So I would recommend doing that. Can all of the ISP who are in attendance please come up the front to answer some questions? Obviously, Eva and Barbara, you know, but I'd like to introduce as well Dr. Sue Vink. She's an expert in freshwater and marine biogeochemistry, including salts and other water quality dynamics in the Fitzroy. And Dr. Nicole Flint. She's a research fellow at TQU, and she focuses on ecological indicators for aquatic ecosystems. And I'm not sure if we have any of our ISP online today, so we'll just have these guys in person. And I'm going to move my podium out of the way for you. Angus, if you're online as well, it would be great if you have any input to the questions.
Okay, I'll stand by.
Feels like a bit like a talk show. Firstly, I want to, if there's anyone in the audience who has a question, Josh has got a roving mic, so just chuck your hand up and he'll come to you. Yes, Sue would like to, what? Yeah, Josh, do you want to pass to Sue? She's got a contribution.
Just to get things going, I had a question actually for Barbara and Angus. During your presentations, you didn't mention cyclones, so I was just wondering what effect that might have on the offshore system.
I can.
Yeah, cyclones have a big effect for a range of regions. If they hit a coral reef, they'll do a lot of physical damage to the reef, which is something that Angus looks out for. I don't know how to let him chime in if he wants to.
Can anyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and in the Fitzroy, at the Fitzroy reefs, in that period where the corals were declining around down to 2011, there were a couple of kind of small cyclonic impacts that were on the disturbance plot at the start in grey. And even though that sort of cyclone Marcia came through pretty strongly after that, we haven't actually seen any really strong cyclone damage across the region. We have lost bits and pieces out at Barren Island in particular, because the waves were coming in from the north a few times and they did break up the corals there. But those corals are all staghorn corals, branching acroporas, and one of their main modes of reproduction is to get broken up and flung around by wave action. And so it's not actually that damaging unless the storms are really severe, in which case those fragments themselves die.
I'll just add, though, that also associated with cyclones, we usually get, we'll often get big rainfall events, and that means that you get a lot of sediment washed off the catchments, and we did see the impact of that on water quality after Cyclone Debbie and Cyclone Yassi in particular. And all of the sediment and the associated nutrients and so forth, most of it gets dumped fairly close to the mouth of the river, but some of it gets carried a lot further out. So you see that in terms of smothering of seagrasses, which may be part of the decline that we saw for a while. That can have an effect for quite a few years afterwards, depending on where it hits. And you also see impacts on water clarity and the amount of light getting through to benthic habitats like seagrasses and corals. And of course, the nutrients that get brought in with those big flood events, whether it's from a cyclone or from another big rainfall event, also have an impact on water quality. So, thank you.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you, Barbara and Angus, for answering questions. Just for everyone who's walked back in the room, a bit of a question and answer time at the moment. So if you do have any questions, pop your hand up. I'll come to you, a bit of a roving mic situation. But we're going to start with our very own Tim Kendrick, who's got a question.
Thanks very much, Josh. Yeah, look, thanks very much for the young speakers so far. I've been sort of quite intrigued with certainly some of the results that we've seen just with respect to sort of nutrient loads within the water. We've sort of seen, we were talking about sort of declines in chlorophyll and just the relationship that has, just with respect to sort of the algal growth and that sort of competition that we sort of see on these reef systems. I'm just trying to sort of understand, if if basically sort of or the connection there between sort of what's happening in, the upper sort of catchment areas and middle catchment areas, and how that actually sort of goes through and relates to what's occurring over the last sort of couple of years with respect to sort of coral growths.
We did see some elevated nutrient levels in some of the upper catchments, but Barb's really our nutrient expert, so I'll pass to her.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. There's, I guess, a lot of components of that. So you get nutrients coming from a range of different activities, and they have increased substantially since pre-development because of the impacts of clearing and agricultural activity. So I think the results showed a decline in the chlorophyll score, which reflects an increase in the higher chlorophyll concentration. And that's that has sort of several effects. One is that it shades the benthic habitats beneath it, but it also it reflects the amount of nutrients in the water, and those nutrients also drive the growth of macroalgae, which can, well, I'll let Angus chime in on macroalgae and coral.
Yeah, I didn't quite hear the question. Was it more focused on that there was a mismatch between?
I'll just restate the question. Sorry, we forgot to give the questioner the microphone. The question was basically there was a decline in the coral score, sorry, the chlorophyll score in the Fitzroy, and the question was, how does that relate to the coral outcomes and the macroalgae that you were talking about?
Oh, okay. I thought I heard that there was a bit of a mismatch between sort of the activities that were reducing inputs into the river but increasing increasing chlorophyll. But I think the one thing that I would say with the macroalgae in the bay is that what we don't know is, like, we know that the macroalgae proliferate in areas of higher nutrients, and they need that nutrient availability, and that helps them get set up. But we really don't know about the legacy of past high nutrient levels and how much, what sort of lag there is. So once established, we don't really know how much nutrients would have to go down before those algae were really struggling themselves, or whether once they're established, it's really a case of them being removed and the nutrient levels being low enough that they don't re-establish. So we're still in that learning game with these long-term monitoring data sets and matching water quality and these community attributes like seagrass and macroalgae. And that's one of the sort of hallmarks of the MMP, is that it's, once we get these long data sets, as Barbara mentioned at the beginning, then we'll start to be able to better understand the dynamics.
I think Eva has something to add, but I just wanted to add one more thing to that. The chlorophyll in the water column is reflecting phytoplankton, so small algae that float about, and that's going to be fairly reactive from year to year as nutrient concentrations vary. Chlorophyll that grow, the macroalgae that grow on the surface of coral, they'll take up nutrients when they go past, but then they remain there. So you can remain with a higher macroalgal cover as a legacy of past higher nutrient concentrations.
Thanks, Barb. And thanks, Angus. What I was going to comment on really is looking at it more from a big picture, Tim, when you look at chlorophyll, right? As Barbara's indicated, chlorophyll, we usually use chlorophyll as an indicator of nutrients. Now, when you look at last year's report card, we had lower flow. So ideally, we would have lower nutrients, and the only source of nutrients would be point sources, because we had not as much. So there's two sources, diffuse and point. And because when there's no flow in the, or less flow in the catchment, then the flow in the river or in a waterway would be predominantly point source flow. But when you look at, and I don't know if we have local governments here, usually point sources are treated, but the river, in some rivers, the only flow they have during a dry event is really flow coming from the sewage treatment plant or other industrial treatment plants, right? That was indicated that the correlation between when you have high nutrients, especially nitrogen, because most of chlorophyll is nitrogen limited, there is a trade-off with light. So what happened, this is what we discussed in the panel, that basically what happened last year, while in some cases there were areas that had high nutrients, there are areas that had lower nutrients, like when you look at the estuary, there was, however, enough light. So when there's enough nutrients there in the estuary waiting for light to get better, because we didn't have a flood, that means then the chlorophyll blooms. So that's one of the things. It's not a mismatch, team. It really is just where is the trade-off between light and nutrients. The second one is, and Barbara raised it, when we look at scores, sorry, we're looking at scores. We didn't actually look at the actual chlorophyll. Well, we look at, it's related to the actual chlorophyll concentration. The scores are usually related to what we're calling as the water quality objective. You know, when you look at Barbara's lines, there's that line there. That's actually water quality objective. So if you get a good score, that means if it's chlorophyll, you are below that line. So that means you're achieving the water quality objective. The water quality objective has been set, of course, by the agency, by the Department of Environment, because that's set as ideally what would be achieving our values in relation to water quality. So there's a lot of synthesis involved in the way we actually convert an actual value of a chlorophyll to the actual score, to the actual grade. And then you then have to correlate that to a nutrient concentration or light availability. And then you correlate with the flow or the rainfall event. So there's a lot of correlations, and that's what the system is dynamic. That's what systems are. And that's why I think Barbara's work in e-reefs and other modeling platforms is important. There's no way that a human mind could actually analyze all of these systems in our own mind. We need the help of numerical models. And e-reefs is an important numerical model for the reef because it synthesizes all these different processes that are happening numerically. Now, we have to calibrate the model. The model will only be as good as us humans actually input data. So the more data we get, the more calibration data we have, then the more validation data we have, the more the model is reflective of what the system should be. So we had, I think, Bob, we had an old Fitzroy model in the past. We could actually model scenarios. That's what models are for. They're meant to model management scenarios. Like as you said, Tim, what happens if we increase the discharge a little bit? Would that actually result in a green bay, for example? So that's what models are for. So the ISP relies on when we start analyzing systems like this, especially when we start looking at long-term data. And that's where I think your question was coming from, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the panel. And if anyone has any further questions, oh, okay. Lee, we have one. You have to be super quick.
Nicole, I just wanted to ask you about the barramundi. That's where we have rid of it.
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, so the question is probably why the barramundi score was lower this year. Is that, yeah. So barramundi, we know, are quite responsive. So the timing of flow, the timing of rainfall is really important for barramundi to be able to fulfill their life cycle, which includes moving upstream and downstream between marine and freshwater habitats, and also coming out into the marine environment ready to spawn and being triggered to do that by the pattern of rainfall through the year. So thing that we check, there's a change in the barramundi score is what was the rainfall like in that year in there was rainfall that wasn't really exactly suitable for barramundi spawning, and that's the most likely reason that the barramundi score was low this year. There are also other things that can impact barramundi recruitment, which is what we're actually measuring in the estuary. A range of different things like water quality and habitat availability, connectivity between freshwater and marine environments. But yeah, generally the first thing we check is how did the rainfall go.
And we have one more up the back. Oh, I'm sure we have heaps. But after this one, if you have any further questions, could you please come to us? The ISP will be here and available. Fiona?
Thank you. My question is about your data sources and then QA/QC on that. Data coming in from a range of sources, both, I guess, professional scientists and then kind of citizen scientists. How does the QA process work across that so you've got a data set that you're happy with that's valid?
Yeah, I might speak a little bit. Yeah, I'll speak a little bit first. So we do have multiple data sets, and you spoke about the citizen science data set as well. To that one, I guess we've revamped that program this year. So we're still trying to get enough data into that WaterWatch data set to be able to go through a QA process. So as of the moment, we're not using the citizen science data in our report card. It's going into its own portal, and we're aiming to drum up enough participation to get a large enough data set to start to review and use that further. In terms of the data that's used in the report card, we are a little bit different to some other report cards. We now have an integrated monitoring program, which is called Fitzroy Regional Receiving Environment Monitoring Program, which we call it, which is contributed to by our partners and facilitated by our partner FCA. So for the first time, we've kind of been able to be involved in a process of making sure that our sites are spatially representative across the basin and that we have real temporal consistency with sampling across the basin and per year. So we now have 49 sites that are all spatially spread in a representative way in each catchment. So we have between 3 and 6 sites in each catchment, and they're all sampled 6 times per year. That's a really great opportunity for us compared to some other report cards who struggle to pull in data from all these different sources to be really consistent and to be able to compare across years really effectively. So this is our 3rd year of that, and hopefully as we start to build that up further, we can do more analysis. I pushed us way over time. Thank you so much to the panel. If you don't mind taking your seats again, we can move forward with the next section. Just a plug for the marine report. So we use that MMP data in our marine report, which you've got on your tables there. We've also revamped the online version for the first time this year. Okay, so connecting catchments, Josh mentioned that we're trying to kind of cover off some of the major pillars in our work, which is science, management, and community. So in the next session for today, we're looking at management and stewardship. Science is one piece of the puzzle, but engaging with the people and the systems that drive change is what makes science truly impactful. And we have 3 speakers from diverse perspectives doing very different work in different spaces of waterway management in our basin, but they're all trying to tackle that tricky intersections between science and management and community. First speaker is Heath, Dr. Heath Kelsey from the US. It is almost midnight there, so thanks so much, Heath, for joining us today. He has been involved in report cards since 2009. So he has a long history in report card world, and his focus has been on helping communities become more engaged in decision making and making report cards more integrated through socio-environmental indicators. So are you online there, Heath?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can. I'm going to do your slides for you.
Okay, excellent. That was my next question. Thank you. Well, thanks for inviting me here to talk to you guys. You guys are having a good afternoon. It is a little bit late here, but that's not too bad. I'm going to be talking to you about some experience we've had with the Chesapeake Bay report card, which is about 15, almost 15 years old. Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. We've learned a lot of things, and so we're going to try and share some of those things. Again, my name is Heath Kelsey. I'm from the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. Um, and yeah, happy to get going. Thanks. Next slide. So when we talk about the kind of evolution of our report card thinking, there are a couple of milestones that come to mind. Many of you might be aware of or familiar with the Moreton Bay report card, which was 1998, and Bill Dennison, who was my boss for 15 years until just this year. He's no longer my boss, which is kind of strange, but he started the Moreton Bay report card in 1998 that some of you may have even been involved in. He brought that process and that kind of approach back to Maryland and began working on the Chesapeake Bay report card. The first Chesapeake Bay report card was created and released in 2007. And I started working on the Chesapeake Bay report card in 2009. So I was kind of around when it was being developed, and then I started working on it in earnest in 2009. Around 2015, 2015 and 16 were two report cards that really kind of changed the way we think about assessment to include additional things. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then in 2017, we took some of those lessons that we were learning from our other experience and brought them back to Chesapeake Bay. So I'll talk a little bit about those events. So next slide. The first generation of the report cards for Chesapeake Bay were really focused on ecosystem health, ecology, and we had very simple metrics. There were 3 water quality indicators and 3 biotic indicators, really looking at, water quality and habitat. That was what we chose to look at. And the process of choosing those indicators, I say we, but Bill and crew brought together the scientists and managers and the people who knew the data well to make sure that we were using the data correctly. We weren't trying to say something that the data couldn't support, and those types of things. But it was really bringing together just the science community and the management community around those things. And we've been evolving a little bit in the people that we bring to this process. So next slide. This is what the interior looked like in very early report cards. You can see we had 15 regions around the bay. Based on those 6 indicators, you can see where things are going well and where things are not going so well. It was very easily distinguished, right? Like you can see here, and it's very clear where things are going well and where they're not. You might say the lowest score is the lower western shore, and right above that is the Patapsco and Back Rivers, which is the Baltimore area of Maryland. So next slide. In 2011, we lost the ability to analyze the phytoplankton community data. And so we had to kind of regroup a little bit. It was a communications issue. And we replaced the phytoplankton community structure indicator with nitrogen and phosphorus. And back calculated all the scores to make sure that things were overall telling the same story, and it didn't change things very much at all. So we were happy with those new indicators. And again, you can see the map showing where things are going well and where they're not. And then as we got into it, we could also look at trends. Where are things improving and where are they not improving? That was the next question everyone had. Okay, you're telling me where things are doing well with these indicators. Of course, they want to dig in and find out why. And then the next question is, are things improving or are they not? So that was we started doing that after 2011. Next slide. Around that time, a lot of people started to be interested in replicating that idea, and you know, me and several other people on our team. I think there's Simon Costanzo's in the audience, I think, as well, or online. We started traveling around to do some of the work on these report cards. Some of the first ones that we worked on were the Great Barrier Reef, which we worked on with the state of Queensland, and then Simon and I went to India, and that's where we started to really kind of get an idea of what it was like to transport or transfer this technology or this approach to different areas, and how we might create a process that would be replicable elsewhere. So I'll come back to this, but in the beginning, we had a couple of places that we worked and kind of developed a new approach to transferring this. So next slide. As I mentioned, one of the places we went, and one of the places that was kind of a milestone for us, was the Mississippi River report card. And this was the first report card that we worked on that included metrics and indicators that were beyond habitat and water quality and ecosystem health. And we worked on this with the Nature Conservancy, and their take was, we're not managing this river system for just ecosystem health. Yes, that's important, of course, but it's only one part of the picture of what we're managing this giant river system for. We're managing this river to prevent floods and keep people safe and infrastructure safe. It's an incredibly important transportation corridor for the country. So we need to look at the infrastructure there and the way that transportation corridor is functioning. It provides water supply to millions of people. I think it's 30 states, and about 40% of the contiguous United States is touched by the Mississippi River watershed. And the river supplies a lot of water for millions and millions of people. As you might imagine, it's an incredibly important economic driver for the country. A lot of the goods and services and a lot of the grain that's produced in the country travels down, and is generated in the watershed and travels down the watershed and is exported through the Port of New Orleans. So it's a hugely important economic driver for the country as well. And then, of course, recreation. People like to get outside. We're managing all of these resources so that people can actually use them. Hunting and outdoor participation is a big industry and an economic driver and a cultural factor as well. And then, of course, we also need to consider what the river system is doing to the Gulf of Mexico and the coast of Louisiana. So we wanted to look at what was happening to the coast of Louisiana. The sediment that comes down the Mississippi River traditionally, it reaches the delta and it kind of feeds the coastal wetlands of Louisiana. But since we've diverted and channelized that river, the sediment is diverted into the deeper parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and we're losing a lot of that coastal area, those coastal wetland areas in the state of New Orleans. And so we looked at that with traditionally, or in the past, the sediment deposition could keep up with subsidence that was going on. And now we're adding, we've got continuing subsidence, we've got sea level rise, and we've lost this sediment deposition. So we're losing coastal wetlands in a pretty steady clip. And then, of course, the nutrients entering the Gulf of Mexico will create a dead zone. So the size of that dead zone is related to the nutrient input into the river or into the Gulf of Mexico. So we're looking at all of these things, and we wanted to look at this in a much more holistic way, because we're not, all the decisions that are made around managing this river system are connected and not done in a vacuum. So we needed to look at all of these things. Next, please. The other one that we worked on, and I actually unfortunately didn't get to participate in this one myself, but it was a really important evolution in our thinking and the way we approach these things. We started working with the World Wildlife Fund on some of their priority watersheds. The first one we worked on was the Orinoco River Basin, and Simon led that project. And again, the communities that were impacted and relied on this river relied on it for a lot of different things. And so we needed to look at other things beyond ecosystems and biodiversity and things. Those are all important, but there's a cultural component to it, management and governance, water supply again. And we looked at all of these kinds of factors. So the other thing that we did with both TNC, but to a larger degree with the World Wildlife Fund, is to embrace the process a little bit. World Wildlife Fund, they live and breathe this kind of stuff and interaction with stakeholders and communities all over the world. And we started working with them. We learned a lot of new ways to interact with stakeholders. And that has really been something that we've taken on board and embraced and expanded in the way that we develop report cards around the world. So next one, please. I told you I'd get back to this. So we continued working with different partners all over the world on these report cards, and we've started to develop a kind of continuous learning cycle. So we learn something, and we take that on board and we apply it in the next place. And then we learn from that and we apply it in the next place. So there's this constant learning cycle. And the other thing we're able to do is that we're able to take all of those things and bring them back to Chesapeake Bay and try those, and apply those things that we've been trying and working on in other places. So we've generated a good amount of practical experience in developing these report cards at different places. And we've been hopefully able to learn a little bit from that experience. Next. So as we were doing all of this in different places, we realized that we were doing the same things. And we were kind of falling into a process that if we followed these steps, we would be able to develop a report card. And so it's a three-phased kind of approach. First is all about planning and stakeholder engagement and things like that. The second phase is the report card development process itself, designing that with stakeholders, choosing indicators, determining those thresholds or objectives, as Eva was saying a moment ago. What are we trying to achieve? How close are we to achieving those things, those objectives or those targets or goals? We can use that to calculate the grades, and then we kind of co-produce with the stakeholders again how this information is going to be presented. And then the last phase is, okay, what are we doing with this? We want to make sure that we're developing something that can be acted on, and we want to recommend things that can be impactful in changing the thing, because we don't want to just monitor something to watch it. We want to actually suggest things that will improve conditions. So that was very important for us. So it's important that to us in our process that we develop things using a shared vision with stakeholders. We co-create the entire project and the report card itself with involvement of the stakeholders from the very beginning. Almost all of our report cards are more holistic in nature, like meaning, beyond ecosystem or water quality. We look at social, cultural, and economic factors as well. And of course, we want to be transparent and rigorous. And then lastly, that last phase, we want to generate some action to improve conditions. So we kind of codified this, and Dr. Vargas Wynn, Vanessa Vargas Wynn, who some of you may be familiar with, also published this in her dissertation. So this is kind of changed the way we think about the report card process a little bit. So next, please. I also mentioned that we're continually evolving, and we've been kind of evolving into new ways of interacting with stakeholders and finding out what their priorities are, because it's important to us that our report cards are relevant to the things that people really care about. And so we've developed lots of different ways to get input and feedback from stakeholders in different venues. So we're continuing to expand that kind of approach as well. So next. Next slide. Thanks. So this is the report card now. I call it the third generation of report cards because we've expanded beyond not just the tidal portion of the bay. We've expanded into the watershed of the Chesapeake Bay, but we're also looking at social, cultural, economic factors as well. So pay attention to the northern part of the bay. That upper bay score is a B-, and it's improving. And that's important because that's where the Susquehanna River empties into the bay, which is a major source of fresh water for the Chesapeake Bay. And for many, many years, the state of Maryland and Virginia, which are the states that border the tidal portion of the bay, we were always pointing our fingers farther north and upper into the upper watershed of Pennsylvania and New York. And kind of lamenting the nutrients and sediments that were being deposited into the bay. But we're starting to see that upper bay score is one of the better scores in the entire region, and it's improving, and it has been improving. Those are long-term statistical trends. So that's important for us to look at. Same indicators, slightly different way of presenting the results. But the same kind of information and looking at how things are doing in different places. Next, please. So I mentioned we were looking at the watershed. This is the watershed for Chesapeake Bay. It's a fairly large watershed. As I mentioned, it goes north into the state of New York and Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, Delaware, and the District of Columbia. So we're looking at things like land use and how that impacts the quality of ecosystem quality. So we're looking at ecosystem-based indicators of protected lands, water quality, fish community, stream benthic community, but then also some social indicators, stewardship, heat vulnerability, social index, vulnerability index, and walkability. And then economic indicators. What are the economic drivers? How is the economy doing in a more local way? Median household income, jobs growth, income inequality, and housing affordability are all those things that we're looking at to assess the health of the watershed around Chesapeake Bay. Next one. These report cards also obviously are venues for us to highlight particular things that people might not be familiar with, but they should. This year we highlighted the plastics issue and man-made debris. So we're on our way to developing a new indicator that can reflect microplastics and debris in Chesapeake Bay. So we're able to highlight that as an issue. And for many people, this might be the first time that they've really considered that as a problem or an issue. Next. Almost done. This last report card was released in July, and we had a pretty big media attention paid to this one. Governor Josh Shapiro attended and promoted the release of the event, and you may be familiar with him. He was in the kind of shortlist discussion for and presidential politics in the U.S. So he was very happy to give good news about the state of Pennsylvania, and that we were able to kind of change the way that people are thinking about the problems with Chesapeake Bay and restoration efforts, because we were able to start showing that the state of Pennsylvania is not the culprit anymore. The things that the state of Pennsylvania are doing are actually having an input. And so we were able to change that larger discussion around restoration in Chesapeake Bay. And then as evidenced by that, we had, the Secretary of Natural Resources and Health and Planning from 2 states, all holding hands at the end with EPA Regional Administrator Ortiz. So it was a big event for us and kind of demonstrated the potential impact that we might be able to have with these kinds of events. Next slide, please. So I won't go through these again. I think I'm running a little over time. So, these are the indicators that are currently in the watershed component of the report card. And this is where we're continuing to work a little bit. So can you go to the next one? So we've arrived at these indicators through our work with stakeholders about what is important for them and what are the priorities, what should they be. But we need to dig in a little bit to understand how these indicators are interconnected. We know that there are connections between society and economy and ecology, but how do those connections work? Where are the points of leverage? And how are those relationships forming? So we need to look at that a little bit better. And to do that also, we need to increase our representation. It's a big watershed. A lot of people need to be involved, including disadvantaged groups, Native American groups, which have been traditionally very hard for us to engage with, agricultural stakeholders as well, and counties and municipalities tasked with sustainability and resilience. So sustainability and resilience are big issues for us in Chesapeake Bay as they are everywhere. And we're going to be incorporating those types of things into the report card process. So next one. Yeah, so the key takeaways from this is this continuous learning cycle with the approaches that we've taken. We take them back to Chesapeake Bay, and then we kind of perfect them and use them some other places. Included a lot of new approaches and a lot of new ways of thinking about the development of the report card, and then thinking about the report cards really are that we're doing now are really more socio-environmental assessments rather than just environmental or ecosystem assessments. So thanks. I hope there's a moment for questions. And if not, if you don't think of them or we don't have time, please drop me a note and I'll try and answer them. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Heath. I think that's a really important takeaway for us, especially from a scientific perspective, that using those integrated indicators, environmental transdisciplinary approaches really increases that buy-in from managers and politicians and community to take up the science and start to put it into practice and create that feedback loop between managers and scientists. Does anyone have a quick question?
Is there any thought to measuring for microplastics in the Keppel Bay area in the next marine report, given the increase in microplastics within both in the freshwater environment and the saltwater environment?
Yeah, so we do have a litter indicator in development at the moment. We actually have Dini from the Dry Topics Report Card, who is a data scientist who's creating that model. It is a model, but it relies on real data that gets contributed through mainly Tangaroa Blue, isn't it? Yeah, Tangaroa Blue Foundation, measurement of litter. So I think we'll have some people from Catchments here who do some of that monitoring in this region that feeds into Tangaroa Blue, which feeds into Dini's model. So that's also a nice connection between the work community is doing into how we can report. So yes, hopefully soon we do have that reporting available. We can only do one more. I'm so sorry.
So I just wanted to, the litter report is looking at larger than microplastic size. So there is a marine microplastics pilot monitoring program. I don't think it that operates in Keppel Bay yet, but may expand in the future.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, do we have one more? We need to schedule more time for questions. Is a learning? Okay, thank you so much. So we'll move on to the next presentation, which is from a different, very local. We're back here in Livingston Shire. Thank you so much, Heath. Online, you can go to bed.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. All right, good night, everybody, or good afternoon.
Thank you, Heath. So I'd like to introduce Lisa Childs, who's the Coordinator for Natural Resource Management at Livingston Shire Council. She's lived and worked in this region for almost all her life. Very long career in natural resource management and local government. And she's here to speak to us about local government's role in waterway management. They have a large role in managing human activity and infrastructure, as well as waterway ecosystems. And here in this region, a portfolio of managing water quality that drains to the southern Great Barrier Reef. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Hello, everybody. Shout out to any other local government reps in the room. And thanks, Mike, for being here from Livingston as well. I'd firstly like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Darringal people. Especially like to acknowledge their elders, past and present. I'd also like to thank the Fitzroy Partnership for River Health for inviting me along today, and also for being in Yeppoon. So thank you. Welcome to Livingston Shire. It's an opportunity to see, I guess, what happens in the river and how it contributes to Keppel Bay and to the Great Barrier Reef. So there are diverse roles for local government in the waterway management space. In the short time I've got today, I can really only touch on a few things, but I hope to sort of talk a little bit about the role of local government in community leadership and governance. Some stuff that we do in the planning and development assessment world. We have some regulatory roles, but for me, a lot of it really comes down to partnerships and to the on-ground work we do. So in Livingston Shire, we have the Livingston Community Plan towards 2050. This is a great long-term plan that provides a structure for us going forward to look after our natural environment, as well as all the other factors that we've started talking about in the last couple of talks. You know, economic, governance, social, health, well-being. Other things that we've put in place in the last 4 years include our environmental sustainability policy. We're obliged to have a biosecurity plan, which we're currently updating in 2024. We have a low carbon Livingston strategy to reduce our carbon footprint as an organisation by 2030. We have a resource recovery and waste strategy to help us look forward into the future in terms of reducing waste production and how we can do that better. Our Living Coast strategy is about coastal hazard adaptation. Our Living Environment strategy is for biodiversity. It's the first time Council's had a biodiversity strategy. We have a shoreline management plan, which is fairly new and we're starting to implement. And we also have our local disaster management plan, which is fairly significant in relation to how we manage impacts to waterways in disasters and how we carry out that recovery. This is just the cover of our biodiversity strategy, which is online. And we also have a YouTube biodiversity video. It's up to you and me. So I encourage you all to go and have a look at those documents and the video, which really reflects our community's aspirations in this space. We're an incredibly biodiverse shire. So lots of different community types, lots of different wildlife to think about, migratory species. And we're lucky enough also to have one of the great World Heritage Areas, the Great Barrier Reef, right beside us. And we have the wetlands of international significance, so a Ramsar wetland. So we've got plenty of stuff to take care of and look after into the future. In the planning and development area, we have our planning scheme. So it's relatively new, 2018, but we are looking at a review and potential amendments at the moment. Some key aspects of the planning scheme involve our overlays. So where biodiversity matters of local environment significance exist, or particular waterways, we might have them identified in our overlay maps. And so development that comes along needs to consider that they interact with an overlay. And we can put certain conditions in place to try and protect some of those values in the construction process, but also things like covenants to try and look after things in the long term. We don't have an offset policy as part of our planning scheme, but we do try to encourage developers to do on-property offsets. So that's where the covenants come in. And rehabilitation too. So we're always seeking the opportunities to see parts of a development area restored or rehabilitated if possible. And of course, all developments need to develop stormwater management plans and consider the water quality of water leaving those development sites. It's a space that I think most central Queensland local governments will be struggling to achieve the high levels of compliance that are required here. So that is really one of the pet projects of mine and many other staff of council, to see how we can improve our practice and start to move the region towards those best practice goals. So we do have a regulatory role as well. So we have our own local laws, and they might include things like illegal dumping and the way people are using public land, which includes waterways. But we also have to implement quite a few state regulations that have evolved to local government. So the Environment Protection Act is one of those. So when people call the pollution hotline, a range of those complaints or issues raised will actually be directed to a local government to investigate. And often local governments are not well resourced in that space. And you'll hear this from local governments, I'm sure, in relation to the resources we need to implement state regulations. The Biosecurity Act is another one where we're quite responsible for how that act is implemented. So for weeds and feral animal control. And I've just illustrated one of the approaches we have is in biocontrol, especially for water weeds. This is a fantastic approach. Biocontrol, as you well know, operates 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It is the most cost-effective approach where we are finding it's having good results. So we do have a biocontrol nursery. Erosion and sediment control is a really big topic, which I mentioned in relation to development. So there's some state policies and regulations around that, which should guide us. And most of these, one of the things about the environmental protection policy, water, is that they have quite high standards in relation to turbidity, and they really focus on high efficiency sediment basins. We have none of those. We have our first one approved though in the last month. So it's fantastic that although we're quite behind other regions in Queensland, particularly the southeast and other states, we're starting to move in a positive way. The other aspect about Environmental Protection Act too is wastewater. So council is the holder of environmental authorities in relation to its wastewater treatment and release, and also in relation to our waste landfill and deposit of waste into the ground. So we need to be compliant ourselves, as well as try and improve our community's performance in this space. But it's the partnerships, I guess, that allow us to move forward. Livingston is a pretty big shire land-wise, but nearly 40% of it is in defence ownership now. And we don't receive rates for defence, Commonwealth land or state land. So our small population of ratepayers is really bearing a pretty big, so there's not a lot of resources that can hit the ground. So we're always looking for opportunities to partner with others, to bring in resources, to bring in expertise, and to get better bang for buck. So our sort of representative body in Queensland is the Local Government Association of Queensland. So they are a great place to find partners in the local government world. They're putting together a Reef Council's rescue plan at the moment, which is kind of like a portfolio, I guess, of projects that local governments feel they can deliver and want to search for partners and governments who will fund them. So looking forward to that plan. There's also the opportunity to renew the Memorandum of Understanding between Local Government Association of Queensland and NRM groups. So we have had that MOU in place previously. So looking forward to the new one. I think we can do more in that space. We're getting some assistance too with erosion and sediment control. The Department of Environment, Science and Innovation are supporting Water by Design to interact with local government. So we recently had the opportunity to put together our own action plan with their support and assistance. Fitzroy Partnership for River Health is also working with us to develop some involvement in a pilot project in the urban stormwater stewardship space. So looking forward to that. And a big support to local government is the Reef Guardian Councils program. So the Reef Authority has been running this program since about 2008. So it's got some history and it's got some achievements that it can really be proud of. And it requires councils who are part of that program to have a Reef Guardian action plan, which is a suite of projects the council will deliver. It's a voluntary program, so it's all about stewardship. And previously there's never been any funding attached, but for the first time the Commonwealth Government has actually come up with a non-competitive grant program which allowed all of the local governments in the reef catchments a slice of the pie as long as they could show compliance with the grant guidelines. So almost every local government in the reef catchment got $900,000 over 3 years to implement their Reef Guardian Action Plan, and that's a game changer. It's fabulous. So these, I guess, are our more higher level partnerships, but I can't go past the local community partnerships. And a big part of that is our local native plant community nursery. So without an endemic plant nursery that produces our local plants, a lot of the rehabilitation that community and council can do wouldn't be able to happen. So it's a key aspect, I guess, of our community action and what council can do. But we work with land care groups and environment groups and NRM groups and catchment groups and try to extend the work each of us does by collaborating. So collaboration is really the key. So it's fabulous, this room full of stakeholders, and you all are working together. So that's a fabulous way for us all to move forward. So I'd just like to thank you all, and hopefully I've been nice and quick.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we definitely do have time for questions. So if anybody has a question, please pop your hand up.
I'd love to know more about the Reef Guardian Management Plan and how that relates to the Keppel Island Reef.
Great, thank you. I mean, local government probably is more terrestrial than we are marine. But of course, as we've all just been discussing, it's what comes down our rivers that affect that marine environment. But our main interaction will be around working with our traditional custodians, so the Darumbal and the Wapabara people and their sea country, and supporting that work where we can. It's very important, I guess, that we all look forward to what we do on Keppel Island, for example. I mean, there's a lot happening in that space, so local government's definitely getting involved to look after the community and the environment there on the island. But yeah, we I guess don't have a management role in the marine space so much, but definitely on the land and on the island.
Thank you. Is there another one? Have you?
The $900,000 that you were granted for the, how is that being spent with the reef management plan? Is there a scope? Or
Yeah. So yeah, there's 3 projects that council put forward for that program. One is a solar retrofit project. So we're actually looking to install 8 off-grid streetlights in the Causeway Lake precinct, which are totally solar powered. So that's like a demonstration project, and also to look at how it can influence reducing our carbon footprint. So streetlights are a massive part of the carbon footprint of council. Our fleet, our electricity bill, and our methane produced at our landfill are our big ticket items in relation to carbon. So that was that one. The second one was around foreshore areas. So we're going to be working with the Bangalee community and also the Todd Avenue community in relation to the health and quality of the environment of their foreshores in those 2 sections. And then we've also got a stormwater and habitat quality project in the Central Park Estate on Oxford Road. There's a big sort of reserve area there that's been a bit degraded through the development process. So the plan is to work with that community to improve the health of that water tributary to Fitzroy Creek.
Great answers, great questions. Has anyone got any final questions?
There will be a panel at the end where hopefully we can get in all of the questions that we've missed. I'm sorry that we've had to be so quick with questions. I would like to now take us from the coast back out west to the paddock. We have Sophie Wilkins here, who's a land management officer from FBA, to tell us about the work that they do integrating science into the paddock and into land management practices. She completed her bachelor in wildlife sciences, but has worked in multiple facets of agriculture. So when she works with landholders, she's taking a holistic approach to find solutions that are productive and sustainable for businesses, but also landscapes. Thank you so much. When I find your thing, here it is. Hi everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Smith. Today we'll be focusing on how Fitzroy Basin Association supports land managers to reduce sediment entering our waterways throughout the catchment. To start with, give you a broad overview of the region, which you've sort of heard a lot about today. It is a very diverse region. Fitzroy Basin Association is a natural resource management organisation that services the Fitzroy region. The area covers a land area of more than 156,000 square kilometres. The region boasts diverse landscapes, industries and communities, and adjoins the southern part of Australia's iconic World Heritage Area, the Great Barrier Reef. The predominant land use in the Fitzroy region is grazing for beef cattle production, which is also the biggest contributor to sediment savings entering the Fitzroy's waterways, which is what I'll focus on today. And as you can see up there, the statistic is that 79% of the land in the Fitzroy region is managed by farmers and graziers. The paddock
Paddock to Reef Integrated Monitoring, Modelling and Reporting Program provides the framework for evaluating and reporting progress towards the Reef 2050 Water Quality Improvement Plan targets throughout the Reef Water Quality Report Card. SBA land management officers play an important role working directly with landholders in the Paddock to Reef program within the Fitzroy catchment. Our team utilised data to support practice change across the region through supporting the implementation of best management practices to reduce sediment runoff and improve reef water quality. So we assess on-ground projects through three categories: hill slope systems changes, gully systems changes, and riparian systems changes, which I'll go through some examples of each of those now. So firstly, we have hill slopes systems change. These projects, I think, are the most common and require the most extension work and support from land management officers with the land managers in our region to really create a long-term practice change. Hill slope projects are looking at trying to improve land that's in poor and degraded land conditions. To create a hill slope practice change, there's a lot of work involved. Our land management officers work through a process of understanding the landholder's current land management, which includes a deep dive into the land manager's stocking rates, herd numbers, existing property infrastructure, and history of the property to really get an understanding of why they manage the land the way that they do. We then develop a land management plan in conjunction with the landholder to give them options on how they can improve their land condition, which in turn improves their business productivity as well as has great environmental outcomes. We do use a lot of science in this process, using reports that can give the land managers information on their land capabilities and limitations, and things like ground cover and soil erosion vulnerability, soil characteristics, rainfall history, and those sorts of things. The goal in the hill slope systems change is to really work with landholders long term and equip them with the information and resources so that they can make informed management decisions that benefit their environment and their business. Here's an on-ground example of a project that we did. So at the beginning, this landholder was a little bit apprehensive about doing some rotational wet season felling. So we worked with the land manager and just asked them to wet season fell one paddock. As you can see, and admittedly we did have a good wet season, so these results might be a little biased, but you can certainly see a difference in those images in just a few months. So the improvement in the ground cover between those couple of months really impacts the amount of water that's able to infiltrate into the soil, and therefore reducing the amount of runoff that goes out and ends up into our waterways. This is another example of a hill slope practice change. So we do, FBA do have funding that we're able to provide with landholders to help assist them to implement the infrastructure. This property was out near Emerald, and as you can see in the photos, the land condition was quite poor, so we call that a similar sort of framework in the ABCD land condition. So the pasture was largely dominated by Indian coots, which is a non-preferred pasture species, and also Parthenium, which is a very invasive weed. And so the grazing in these areas was quite uneven as the cattle were selectively grazing the preferred pasture species. So we worked with this landholder to support them to implement the infrastructure that's listed up there with the aim of improving the ground cover and pasture quality and ultimately reducing the runoff out into the reef. Next, we have our gully systems change. So this is another action that landholders can take to reduce their sediment that runs off to the reef. We work with land managers to minimise their erosion risk and remediate gullied areas. These can be in the catchment area, so working with the landholders to reduce the grazing pressure outside the gullied areas. So it's slowing the flow of water down before it really hits the start of the erosion that's in the paddock. Another example is implementing contour banks throughout the catchment area, which is the bottom photo there. That's the level bank that holds water up, particularly on a slope, so it slows the flow of the water down before hitting the head of the gullied area. If there is major gullied areas, we also support mechanical intervention, which can include things like drop structures, rock chutes, battering and porous check dams, which I'll give you some examples of those now. And we work with the soil conservation officer to design those projects so that they can withhold 1 in 100 year flood events. This project was out south of Rockhampton. The project design included reshaping the gullied area, which you can see in the image on the top left, and implementing an in-channel rock chute with some revegetation and bank battering. So bank battering is where the gully is quite a steep drop, you sort of batter the edges so it's more of a gradual slope. We then sowed some pasture mix on the disturbed areas after the completion of the earthworks, which was really to establish some ground cover to ensure the success of the project going forwards. You can see in those monitoring photos down the bottom, that was after the works was fairly well complete. So from 2020, 2021 and 2022, those revegetated areas really were established. This is the same project, it's just working through, you can see the rock chute being implemented on the left-hand side. The middle photos are the revegetation works, and then the photos on the left are post-monitoring photos. This is another gully that was down near Broome. And this is one of the designs that we worked with the soil conservation officer. The project was a 20-metre wide drop structure and was used some geofabric and rock with training banks on either side to rehabilitate an eroding gully head, which you saw in the previous photo. And these are some photos of the works going in. In this one, it's a bit hard to see, but in the catchment area, you can see that there was low ground cover when we started the project. So it just highlights the importance of working in those catchment areas of the gullies as well to improve the ground cover to slow the water down before it hits those gully heads. Lastly, we have our riparian systems changes, and these can go from fencing off smaller waterways to really major stream bank restoration sites. So some of the actions that we do is, riparian fencing and putting in off-stream water points, because often your riparian areas are sweeter country for your cattle to graze, so they often favour those areas, leading to a degradation in the land conditions. So putting in off-stream water points and fencing attracts cattle away from those areas. This is one of our stream bank rehabilitation sites. It was 600 metres of stream bank that was battered and repaired. The site is unique because it has bedrock underneath, so the team couldn't use the usual pile fields that were in the photo before. And so they had to use rock balls and footer logs. The site was revegetated and irrigated to ensure that the trees and ground cover were established well. And then fencing was also implemented to control stock access to the stream bank in the future. This is one of our more recent projects that has pretty much just been completed, so that's pretty exciting. One also did save 654 tonnes per year of sediment to the reef, so that's pretty significant. And that is all. I would just like to say that I do have some other colleagues here today from our partnerships, environment and waterways as well. So if you see any of us in the check chat, please come and say hi. Ask.
Thank you so much, Sophie. I actually have a question before I throw to the audience. We're talking a lot today about more science, better science, more action, more management, more change, more community involvement is kind of what we're all talking about today. So I wanted to ask, do you think that landholder perspectives and voices are shifting and changing in this space as well?
Thanks, Smith. Yeah, I think the people element is definitely a challenging one, and it's that's, I guess, a lot of the work that we do is providing the extension to the landholders to try and equip them with the knowledge so they can go and implement the practice change themselves and then on other parts of their property as well. And I think it does take a long time for some of those things to click, because as much as the resources or the science can say, a landholder will pretty much always come back to, well, my property is different, even if it's the work happened on their neighbour's place. So I think there's also, I think, a bit of a generational shift happening at the moment with the younger generation coming through. So I think the younger generation are much more motivated by environment and those sorts of things. So yeah, I think there is a positive shift. Anybody else have a question? Yep.
Trees President, CQG Consulting. Yeah, great presentation, Sophie. Some really fantastic work there, particularly that gully remediation work. I just caution though, there was one slide there that did worry me, and we talk about the importance of science, where you showed the destocking on the hillside, where it was just a 2-month gap, and we know country in this area does recover very quickly in that period. So if you're going to, where agriculture is so important for this region, and we're trying to get credibility with the people on the land, it's important to have robust data and repeatable data. And so I'd pull that slide off your presentation. Don't let people in government or conservation groups trying to shut down the agriculture sector see that, because it's not real science. That's my only comment. The de-stocking on the hillside one, the 2-month gap. It's not enough data. It's great work. It might be working, but you need more data to present that.
I think that's also where it's important for us to all work together and in partnership with between scientists and managers. We should all be helping each other to get the best data and make the most practice change. It's not on any one single organisation or person to make that happen. If I could just comment on that, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was just an example of working with a landholder, because we want to apply these practice changes across whole of property, ideally in the perfect world. So it's just we have to go through a process with the land managers to help them get on board with seeing the results of what is possible and what can change, even in a short amount of time. Like, yes, most of the time land condition is a long-term change. But yeah, for that landholder in particular, it was really just getting them to show them an example of the benefits that can come from wet season spelling, all those sorts of practices. Because there's definitely still people that are apprehensive towards that. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Very nice presentation. I was interested to understand that when you construct your rock chutes and your drop structures and your things like that, are you looking to time the construction of those in a specific time of the year? So you're avoiding things like the wet season and things like that. And then also too, when you are constructing those, say you are timing them outside the wet season, are you still implementing controls in case you get some unseasonal rain? And what are those controls?
Great question. Yes, we do time the construction of those to not align with the wet season. I guess it depends, when landholders come on board and start chatting with us, because the process in designing those rock chutes can be quite lengthy as well. So then an initial step that they can take is something as simple as using an electric fence to exclude cattle from that area and create a bit of a buffer of pasture around the gully. And the other thing is working in that catchment area. So immediate actions that you can take once you've identified a gully is coming back to matching that stocking rate to carrying capacity to really try and improve the ground cover in those areas. And I guess on that point, it's often we sort of have to look at a whole of catchment approach as to why is that gully actually there in the first place. Is it a natural process, or is it because the land has been overstocked and therefore preferred pasture species have been overgrazed and the ground cover is completely reduced, hence the water velocity has increased and the water coming into that has increased. So yeah, simple actions is coming back to matching that stocking rate to carrying capacity. Even some of those low level banks in the catchment areas can help as well, before doing some really heavy duty
remediation actions.
Perfect. Thank you, Soph. Great presentation. Round of applause, everyone. And thanks for the questions. Little present there. We've obviously heard from some fantastic speakers today. I hope you've all taken it in. We'll take this time now to have an afternoon tea break. I know everyone's sort of busting to get out of their seats. There is some afternoon tea just out here on the table. Brewery's not open yet, so don't go there. But yeah, we'll all welcome you back at about 3:10. Thank you. Hi everyone. I've done it again. I scared you all. We'll just get everyone to take their seats again. We'll just get back into it for our afternoon session. Some pretty enticing, pretty encouraging, and very good speakers coming up. Not that the previous ones weren't. So we'll get that'll get everyone seated. Can I get everyone seated, please? And we'll get into it in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
So waterways, I think, as peaceful, as relaxing, but I also look at it as our future. Definitely Stony Creek. Absolutely love it there. The kids love it there. It's always looked so beautiful, and yeah, it just has that beautiful familiarity to it. So waterways, I think, as peaceful, as relaxing, but I also look at it as our future. Definitely Stony Creek. Absolutely love it there. The kids love it there. It's always looked so beautiful, and yeah, it just has that beautiful familiarity to it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed afternoon teams. I certainly did. Tucked into a couple of the suites out there. Yeah, so this afternoon we'll finish us up around 4:30. So we haven't got long to go, but we've got some really good speakers coming up, interesting speakers. I'll hand over to Miff to introduce them, but enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for this morning. I hope that you're getting a lot out of it, and I appreciate all of the sitting and listening that you're doing. We just showed a quick video there that was of Jody, who's in the audience at the back. That's part of one of our new projects called Waterway Stories that's up on the website, and we will also have that at the cocktail event this evening for everyone to interact with. And I also wanted to do, on that note, a social media plug. If you want to see more of Eva's brilliant videography work, then follow us on socials. Also, the brilliant work of Tracy and Bella, who I can't see right now, but on our socials. Okay, so in the to start the next session off, we're going to do another Mentimeter kind of audience participation activity. We've heard a lot of content already today, and I can't thank the speakers enough. All of these speakers gave up their time and effort to make today a really good event, so I'm so grateful for that. And just to give us an opportunity to kind of collect our thoughts and move our thinking into, I guess, the future, we've got this Mentimeter activity. So if you can scan the QR code, they are also on the tables, and I think this one has kind of a weedy picture on it. Okay, so this first question, what is your vision for our water future? So when you think of your water future, the future that you want to see, regardless of if it's going to happen, how we're going to make it happen, any of that, just think about the future that you want, the future that you want to pass on to others, what would fulfill you, how would you describe it? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it mean to you? This is really interesting answers. The last time I did an activity like this, oh, happy sharks, that's really cute. The last time I did an activity like this, we saw a lot of answers around joy, pride, connection. So we're seeing some of that come through with the happy shark. Okay, that's just kind of getting your thinking going. Now I want you to think about the words that you chose and the feelings that were behind those words, and then answer this question. Don't overcomplicate it and think too much. Just think about what came up for you when I asked you what your vision is, and then think about how might we get there. What do we need to do to achieve a future of joy or pride or happy sharks? Maybe it's something that we're already doing, but we need to focus more on. Or maybe it's something that you haven't thought about in this kind of framework before. Honesty is coming up a couple of times. More trees and collaboration, communication. No people. Unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to achieve that one. But I did say blue sky, didn't I? Reflection. Hopefully through these Mentimeters, we're doing some of that. More honesty. That's interesting to see that coming up so much. Better understanding. These are all really great answers. So now I'm going to ask you an even worse and harder question. What do you think would hinder us from achieving that? What are we missing? Or what are we doing that's inconsistent with your water future? Or what's missing in this space that becomes inconsistent to your water future? Annoying. Get rid of that. It's really interesting that we were seeing so much about communication and honesty in the previous one, and that's coming up again here in the hindrance section as misinformation and lack of communication. Politics. Yeah. Politics is coming up a lot. And we heard some talk about funding and how that can be quite a limiting factor already today. Visibility for work and opportunities. That's something we talk about a lot in report card world, because obviously we're all about reporting and communicating what's happening. So for us, this is a really important one of how do we report on and make visible what's happening. LNP. Elections on this weekend, people. Okay, thank you so much for your engagement in that. I'm really excited to see how we in the comms people can report all of this back to you so that you can have it. I think using the Mentimeter, although we're trying it out for the first time this year, it's a really nice way of capturing what's happening in the audience and what's happening in the room, and hopefully we can give that all back to you. Now we're going to move on to our last session for the day. In my notebook. Yes, our last session for the day is community connection and action. So these are waterway communities that have visions for their futures and their waterways, and they are taking steps to achieve those visions and bring those visions to life. To start this off, I'd like to introduce our first presentation. I actually met Jen when I was snorkeling on a weekend, and we booked Keppel Dive for a drop-off and a pickup. So I'm really pleased to welcome Carl and Jen. Carl's the owner of Keppel Dive and Fantastic Cruises, and Jen's their dive manager. Many of you will know of this local business, but you might not know about all the monitoring work that they're doing to help protect the reef. So they've come in today to explore with us their monitoring programs and their findings, and what this means for the reef community.
Hi, thank you very much for having us. And yeah, it all started with Miff. She actually came out on a snorkeling trip with us and a beach drop-off, and the eco trip turned into a conversation with Jen, and one thing led to another, and now we're sitting here having a chat with you guys and taking 40 or so of you out for a dive and a snorkel tomorrow. So we've been told we're running a little bit over time. Make no mistake, myself and Jen will make that up, because we're taking up all of your time tomorrow. So you're with us all day, so we won't be here with you this afternoon too much. I'll just talk a little bit about myself and a little bit about Keppel Dive and Water Sport, what we do, give a brief overarching view of exactly what we do, and then Jen will get a little bit more into the detail. So yes, I'm Carl. Myself and Jen, we work with an amazing team of women, men and school kids at Keppel Dive and Water Sports, and Fantastic. We're a small family business, but we're doing rather big things in the Keppel area in the form of data collection, survey work, predatory species control, identifications of areas of concern and areas of success. We work with the traditional owners and travelling public, tourism, schools, unis, industry, AIMS, and the Australian Reef Authority, partnering and providing services in real time so that we can measure, monitor, plan and act in real time with our partners, for not only just responding to the now, but also understanding and planning for the future requirements and needs. The program I'm talking about and that guides us has been developed by the Reef Authority and AIMS. On behalf of the Australian Commonwealth Government, this is a site stewardship and reef protection education program, identifying tourism sites on the Great Barrier Reef for the pure purpose of enhancing marine park protection. The program so far has been one of the most impressive schemes that I've ever come across in any industry or sector that I've worked around in any part of the world. It has identified a handful of tourism operators with strict selection criteria, local to the area, understanding that tourism and general public with science can and should work hand in hand. That the best and most effective way of creating an environmental balance with education and protection programs in place. It's by utilising the knowledge of locals on the ground with the general public in front of them that the data that we collect not just goes to a lab 2,000 kilometres away and kept in isolation, but also is passed on 20 centimetres in front of us to kids, families and business groups and partners alike. I've watched lives change, movements take place and true change within the work that the program represents. For all the data that you'll see here today and tomorrow and the next day in your offices, emails and boardrooms, there's an outcome. The end result of our actions today, tomorrow and the next day, the outcomes form in our rivers, systems and oceans, end up on our houses, industries, communities and on our doorsteps. Every day, tomorrow, the next day and the day after that. I'll allow Jen now to get into the detail of it all, and yeah, thanks very much for taking this.
Thanks. Okay, so the Great Barrier Reef. Yep, it's one of the world's most biodiverse and interconnected ecosystems that we have out there on our doorstep. And so a few fun facts that we have here. It's 2,300 km long. There's 3,000 coral reefs, 600 continental islands, of which Keppel Island is one. 1,625 types of fish, 133 varieties of sharks and rays, and 600 types of soft and hard corals. So what do we do? What is our part in protecting the reefs? Here at Keppel Dive, as Carl mentioned,
We're part of the Tourism Reef Protection Initiative. We're one of 26 high standard tourism operators across the Great Barrier Reef that take part in this program and can conduct the survey. So we have trained staff that have completed theory and practical based training with the Eye on the Reef program. This program works in partnership with Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority and the Australian Institute of Marine Science. For some of these surveys that we conduct, we have RIS, which is our Reef Health and Impact Surveys. We have our Tourism Weekly Surveys and our Photo Point Surveys. So I'll go into a little bit more about these surveys. So our Reef Health and Impact Surveys. These surveys are designed to get a snapshot of the reef. To do this, we conduct 5 metre radius surveys at 3 different depths. So 3 metres, 6 metres and 9 metres. And we do 3 surveys at each one of those depths. So by the end of it, we have 9 surveys there from that reef. So we can get an idea of the reef health on many different reefs around the country. Then we move on to our Tourism Weekly surveys. So as the title suggests, we do these weekly and at the same spot every week. So Monkey Reef is our stewardship site where we snorkel the same path every week and conduct a 20-minute swim completing these surveys. So from this, we can get an idea of reef health and look at the analysis of data to understand changes to the reef system over time. So we're completing these weekly surveys here since December 2022. And then we move on to our photo point surveys. So this is a bit of an extension from our Tourism Weekly. So here we will take photos along that Tourism Weekly route. We take between 60 to 80 photos, roughly every 5 metres. These are then uploaded into a program called Reef Cloud, where we identify the different aspects of the reef. So in turn, then train the computer program to recognise and do the plan. Here we can record the effects of what we're reporting on in the Tourism Weekly survey. So data analysis, what happens next? So then these surveys are uploaded onto the Reef, Great Barrier Reef Marine Park online database, where we can attain an understanding of what is happening with the reef system. Over time, we can see trends in data such as effects of water temperature, increase, etc., and the early warning stages of poor reef health. If action is required, we can put it into place early, such as an increase in the number of surveys, or removal of things such as pests like tripella or clams on starfish. For these surveys, we're not touching or having an impact on the reef, we're recording what we see and removing predators as required. So here we've got some of our nature diaries, which have been taken from our Tourism Weekly data. So in the top one, we can see our water temperature. When in August 2022, we were about 18. And then in 2023, in February, we're at 28. And then you're seeing the lowest in August 23, around about 19. So we can see some of our data there. In the bottom one, we have our coral bleaching. And as was previously mentioned by those before us, you can see in February this year, we did have it was very warm. We did have a increase in coral bleaching, but from this data, what we can see is that our harder, faster growing corals, our branching corals, are more affected by that coral bleaching than our softer corals. Softer corals are a little bit more resilient and slow growing. Other data we've got, we record our macroalgae, some types of macroalgae we have, and then also the bottom one is our grazing herbivores. So it's good to compare those two. Grazing herbivores keep control of that macroalgae so it doesn't get too much in abundance. So then we've got a snapshot here of what we're seeing out there. So top 5 fish we see around are our damselfish, yellowtail barracuda, our breams, parrotfish, wrasse, and our long-tailed rock cod. We've got about 80% hard corals out there and 20% soft corals. So the impact, some of the things that we do out on the reef to help look after it. One of them was our Mars stars. So this was named by the Waffa people, meaning connecting and laying down. And so with these milestones, they were put in place in October 2022. In the background there, you can see amongst the reef, there's sort of starfish-shaped metal objects. And so they started out as small corals, and over a couple of years, we can see how much they grow. So here we're developing and trialling rehabilitation tools for future reef management, promoting hard coral coverage in small areas of reef, providing an opportunity for visitors to view examples of reef stewardship in action. That's one project that we have going on. So that is that one particularly was at Monkey Reef, and there's also one at Shelving and Comfy out there as well. So a snapshot of what we've been up to. The slide on the left there is the overall tourism reef protection initiative. So there's 26 operators involved. There's 109 reefs being targeted and 272 high-value tourism sites protected. On the right is the data that we've been doing. So this is from December 2022 to December 2023. So in that year, we conducted 276 surveys and uploaded 97 images to the database. So who do we pass this knowledge on to? All of our customers that come and visit us leave with an experience and understanding of the Great Barrier Reef. Whether it's an educated, guided eco-snorkel tour or simply a beach drop, chatting to the skipper on the way, evidently how I ended up here. Our customers range from international visitors, our lovely locals, higher educational groups, the science community, and a variety of different groups from many different organisations. We have many different school groups that come to visit for educational practical learning that coincides with their curriculum. We're here to influence and educate and help protect the Great Barrier Reef together. So how is this all connected? The Great Barrier Reef is connected to the land by the water cycle. Catchments are from the land area, rainfall which flows into the Great Barrier Reef. The journey, rainwater collects pollutants such as mud and nutrients, as we've all been speaking about this morning, and now fertilizer and other human contaminants like pesticides and mining chemicals. There are 7 key terrestrial habitats that flow, filter, and clean this water before it flows into the Great Barrier Reef. The catchment is the land component of the Great Barrier Reef ecosystem, but is not part of the designated marine park or World Heritage Area. This is a great little here again, just what everyone's been talking about this morning, which is great. So you've got the catchments up the top there, flying down the estuaries into the reef there. So what next? How can you guys help? There's many things we can do. For instance, picking up litter, disposing of it correctly so it doesn't end up in our oceans. Reducing plastic waste and reusing reusable bags and coffee cups. Reuse, repair, recycle before buying new. Visit the reef with an eco-friendly high-end tourism operator. They're committed to help and protect the reef and will have knowledgeable guides on hand to share the beauty of the reef with you. Every trip out to the reef includes an environmental charge to the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, which goes towards reef conservation. Respect the reef and marine life, don't touch or take anything, don't harass the marine life. Leave empty shells where they are, as many other marine critters might make them their home. You can download the Iron Reef app and add your sightings into what you saw on the reef. That's a great thing you can do yourself, and also spread the word. So if you want to help and learn more, if you're interested and want to learn more and come on one of our specific tours and weekly survey tours that we do, or viz dives and learn more in depth about the surveys. I know some of you guys are coming out tomorrow to do just that and learn all about what we're doing actually out on in the water. Or join us for any one of our regular tours. We're out there doing what we love, sharing our passion with everyone that comes to our doors. What's out on these tours, we're constantly monitoring the reef, its health. We can only do that to have people like yourselves that are willing to come out and learn and see this natural wonder of the world's Great Barrier Reef. By all coming together, we can look after this beautiful natural living environment that is right on our doorstep and enjoy it for years to come. So yeah, we look forward to all seeing you out there, those that are coming out tomorrow, and showing you what we put into practice. If you have any questions, then yeah, do come and find us, and we'll go through them. But yeah, thank you. Thank you.
you so much. I'm really excited for tomorrow now. I hope everyone who's got a ticket also is. Well, I have only one quick question, and then we do have a panel session coming up very soon. So if anyone's got a burning question, we can do that now. No, great. Oh, someone does have one? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Jen put some very quick data up there, grazing herbivores. I think she means fish, and it looked like numbers were going crazy after the macro algae numbers increased. Could you just comment on that? They looked like there were lots more grazing herbivores with the increase in macroalgae.
Yeah. But yeah, it's something that we definitely are keeping an eye on, and do look back at that data to look at that, because yeah, it is, if we are getting an increase in algae, then hopefully we are getting those grazing herbivores which do eat that algae to keep it under control. So yeah, in the data, that's what we look for and see what's happening.
Thank you. While we're on this, there's a couple of divers for the tank dive tomorrow that haven't filled out the form. So if you haven't filled it out, please do that. Or if you're confused about what I'm saying right now, please come and talk to me afterwards so that we can get you on the boat. So our final speakers today are joining us after a full day of school. So I'm very grateful for their efforts and their parents for bringing them here after a full day. We've got here today Team Hatchlings, which are the youth arm of Team Total CQ. They're focused on, yeah, maybe take the seats and then your eyes won't burn out. They're focused on awareness and behaviour change in the Capricorn Coast communities, protecting, nesting and hatching marine turtles. And with them today we have Bethany Bell, who's the Science Communications Officer at Fitzroy Basin Association, and she's also an absolute powerhouse for working with local people across the entire basin. So thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much. And some of the parents that support these team hatchlings are actually handing out some brochures, information brochures to each of the tables. So a couple of years ago, we put together this brochure that tells a bit about the work that these guys do. So yes, I'm Beth Lee, and I'm very proud to be associated with Team Hatchlings. We have Lily, Sienna, Olin, Reef, and Phoenix. And these aren't the whole group of Team Hatchlings. There are a few others that couldn't make it today. Now, Team Hatchlings came from a community action project a few years ago, initiated by Great Barrier Reef Foundation, which you all know and love. And they decided to align themselves with our broader organisation called Team Turtle CQ. Hands up if you've heard of Team Turtle CQ. Hopefully. Team Turtle CQ is an amazing marine turtle monitoring program. It's a citizen science project. So basically, dozens of volunteers choose their favourite beach, walk that beach pretty much every day for 6 months, from about October to March, and record all the data onto an app. The data then goes to the state government through the Queensland Turtle Conservation Project. So Team Hatchlings aren't old enough to drive down to their local beach and monitor it by themselves. We thought, well, how are they going to contribute? And they worked out that educating the community about the impacts of light on turtles was going to be their main focus. So you notice that once you do get your brochure, there's some cute little photos of them a few years ago, giving you some ideas about how to minimise the light coming from beachside residents onto those beaches, because light really does have a major impact. So, without further ado, I think I'll hand over to Lily to talk about what Team Hatchlings actually do.
Thank you, Bethany, for that wonderful introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Team Catchments was established in 2021 with one main goal: to educate the community on light pollution and how light pollution affects marine turtles. Marine turtles like dark beaches to lay their eggs, and bright artificial lights can deter them. If they don't feel comfortable, they will turn around and head straight back to the ocean and not lay. This means that the female marine turtle can use a lot of her energy going back and forth looking for a dark beach to lay her eggs. When it comes to the hatchlings, as soon as they break out of their nest and emerge onto the beach, they are naturally attracted to the moon and the moonlight on the water. This is what guides them to the ocean. If any artificial light is introduced to the hatchlings' environment, they will be attracted to that light instead. This causes the hatchlings to waste precious energy going in the wrong direction. Here on our own local beaches, we have had members of Team Turtle CQ find hatchlings meters up the beach from their nests, in the dunes and the scrub behind the nest. Last turtle season, a Team Turtle CQ member noticed that hatchlings had emerged and headed towards the water. However, once in the water, the light from the nearby skate park and boat ramp car park caught their eyes, so they turned 90 degrees and headed towards the bright lights. The hatchlings then came back out of the water towards the lights. Sadly, they were found on the beach and in the boat ramp car park, all because they followed artificial lights. We are lucky enough to have 3 marine turtle species nesting on our local beaches from October to December: the green sea turtle, the flatback turtle, and the loggerhead turtle. From December to March, the hatchlings start to emerge from their nests. Only 1 in 1,000 hatchlings live to adulthood though. How devastating would it be if that one hatchling was lost to our lights? On the 20th of October, Sunday just gone, we held our 3rd annual Turtle Hour. This is where we asked our local community to turn off their lights from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. The aim of Turtle Hour is to raise awareness about the negative impacts that artificial light has on our nesting turtles and their hatchlings. It is also a great way to quietly celebrate and reflect on how special marine turtles are to our local environment. We've also been handing out information flyers to the houses close to the nesting beaches and surrounding streets to try and help bring that awareness to everyone. Our town is growing rapidly and new people are arriving all the time, so it's always good to refresh locals' knowledge and inform our new wonderful residents of what amazing creatures we have in our doorsteps.
Thanks, Lily. Now we have Owen.
Turtles are wild animals, and when a hatchling emerges out of their nest, their instinct tells them to go for the brightest light they see, which should be the moon reflecting off the ocean and towards the horizon. Now, the problem starts when us humans leave our artificial lights going, which are often brighter than the moon, which means that the hatchlings run towards the light and get lost, never finding their way back to the ocean. One of the parts that Team Hatchling project was to measure light pollution on our beaches. We used the light meter to measure the light impact on our local beaches, recording the brightness near nest sites and down at the water's edge. This is where we can all make a difference, and it is up to every single one of us to help reduce the light pollution on our beaches. We're incredibly lucky to have these amazing animals in our backyard, and it is our job to help make sure these little hatchlings have the best chance of survival. And we need to protect the animals so that our kids and our grandkids can see them too. As a part of Team Hatchling's project, I put on a turtle costume and attached a 360 camera to my head, and then crawled up the beach while my mum didn't film, and she shone a light at me and pretended she was a human shining a light at a turtle. And then we took the video and put it on some virtual reality goggles so that people at the markets could experience just how blinding the light is to the turtles. Here are some tips on how you can help do your bit. Switch off any unnecessary lights, close your curtains and blinds, and use a motion sensor light for your lights outside. You can also just position your lights so that they face away from the beach. Use plant vegetation as a buffer, try and keep the light out, and if you don't need a torch, let the moonlight guide you. Always remember, turtles about, so lights out.
Thanks, Owen. All right, now we have Phoenix talking about markets, what we've been doing in the market.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Phoenix. I've been a part of Team Hatchlings for the last 3 years. One of the things I've loved doing is the markets. It's really cool because we encourage kids to come in and get involved in lots of turtle activities. We get to help them learn about marine turtles while they do things like decorate reusable bags. At some of our markets, we have helped them paint little turtle-shaped sticks so they can take home and put in their garden. At all of our markets, we have made magnets and Christmas decorations that support our annual Turtle Hour, which is on October the 20th. These magnets are the size and shape of the eggs that our flatback turtles lay on our beaches. We also have a pledge board that we encourage families to write something down that everyone can do to make a difference for the future generation of our marine turtles. For example, closing blinds and turning off unnecessary lights. Thank you.
Thanks, Phoenix. And now we have Reef.
Hello everyone, my name is Reef and I've been a part of Team Hatchlings for 3 years now, and I love everything about this group and what we symbolise. One of my favourite activities was the Pine Fest Parade last year. We engaged 1,000 people, which is so awesome in helping raise awareness about our local marine turtles. Doing this as a team is so important to me because it means that families can also celebrate Turtle Hour and see how passionate we are about protecting our marine turtles. We turned a golf buggy into our float, which we decorated with photos of turtles and signs from the market stores, as Phoenix showed. We also had a huge golf buggy, huge turtle riding a surfboard on the top. We won the award for Best Circular Float because they love the fact that we reused all our resources from our last market stores. We handed out magnets that show the date and time of Turtle Hour. I also love all the kids running up to us being excited about turtles because it means a lot to me that we are inspiring more people to do their part in turtle conservation and hopefully cherish turtles as much as we do.
Okay, our last hatchling speaker is Sienna, and then we're going to have we're going to show a video and have an activity for you guys to do.
Hi, my name is Sienna Mills, and I've been a part of Team Hatchlings for 3 years now. Owen and I were excited to be asked by the FBA to speak on one of the episodes of the Ripple Effect podcast in regards to coastal marine turtles in our area. We were able to highlight why we joined Team Hatchlings and what we have enjoyed about the great past activities and events we have hosted, such as Pine Fest, and attending our local markets during nesting season. This also gives us the opportunity to speak about the community awareness projects that we have participated in to increase our local community's awareness of light pollution and the impact it has on our turtle hatcheries. We were also able to acknowledge the positive impact that our team turtle mentors, Sam, PK, Bluey, and Destiny, have had on us. Through the mentorship, we have learnt how to conduct light reading, how light pollution impacts the hatchling survival rate, and how introduced species such as foxes can further decrease hatching numbers. The podcast episode was a great opportunity to promote Team Hatchlings and the important messages that we are passionate about delivering to our community. Team Hatchlings was also excited to be invited to be a part of the Great Barrier Reef Foundation on the Frontline project. We were able to produce a short video that the foundation highlighting our Team Catchments project as a youth-led marine turtle conservation and stewardship initiative that supports our local passionate youth to develop our leadership skills and to plan and implement education and awareness-raising activities within the community. Each team member was given the opportunity to speak about different aspects of Team Hatchlings and how we contributed to increasing community awareness. On behalf of Team Hatchlings, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our mentors and their guidance and all the effort they have contributed to the success of Team Hatchlings over the years. The opportunities they have encouraged and supported us participate in has grown our knowledge and awareness on such an important conservation issue, while also increasing the confidence and engage with our local community as
Wow. I think you'll all agree they did a great job, and this is not an easy task for them to stand in front of all you important scientific people. So these guys have been in at least 2 videos and 1 podcast, and this is the most recent one that Sienna was talking about that the Great Barrier Reef Foundation has funded.
In this episode of The Frontline, we bring you 2 inspiring projects on the Capricorn Coast that are empowering youth to become better leaders in their community, to protect the reef and the special creatures that live there. With one project up in the catchment and the other on the beach, these projects are showing how everything is connected, from the land to the ocean.
Team Hatchling is a youth-orientated group. Their primary goal is to help educate the community.
Our main focus last year was light pollution. The tricky point is that a lot of people don't actually realise that we do have nesting sea turtles in our backyard. Only 1 in 1,000 hatchlings will live to adulthood. But what if that one little hatchling gets lost due to our lights?
I think when the message comes from them, it's very impactful.
Well, we were all here brainstorming and we came up with Team Hatchling. It's a youth-led group where all of us, we try and measure light.
For the last few seasons, we have been using a sky quality meter to take light measurements. We take these measurements where they hatch, halfway and at the water's edge.
We are here on Fisherman's Beach and we are going to have a look at how turtles come up a nest. So this is where our nest actually was.
And we take these measurements, that way we can see which areas have the most light pollution. That way we can communicate with the people in those areas. When they come up to the markets, they ask us.
Yeah, and we just love explaining to them about turtles.
Just the kids alone are some incredible personalities, and I'm personally inspired by their drive and passion.
It makes me really happy knowing that I'm making a difference for the marine life and turtles.
Thanks to their efforts, the local community has really got behind the team. By adopting these new behaviours, they really are helping these young turtles off to a better start in life.
I'm pretty happy to be one of the youth that is able to be a part of Team Hatchling because it's super special. Not a lot of kids get to do this. That's why we're trying to open it up to a lot of kids so that everybody can help make a difference.
Turtles about to lights out!
Our next generation of leaders are learning how our actions on
Good for watching it again. Okay, so you can see now there's a board there with a beautiful marine turtle laying eggs. And what we'd like you to do, and the hatchlings are going to help me with this, they didn't know it, but we've got little paper eggs and pens. Or you can use whatever pens you've got. And what we'd like you to do is have a think about what you can do to help marine turtles. And just write your pledge on the little packet. I've got 3 of these. And I've got heaps of pens. Yeah. Yeah, you can all you can, sorry. And there's this whole big box of pens as well. So this could take a minute. It's going to take more than a minute. We'll take 5 minutes or so. And there's another packet of roundy things. Oh, yeah. We've got blue tack to actually stick some up here if you're not too worried about everyone seeing what you've written. And I think Josh is going to go around and interview people as well and ask them what they're writing.
I am. I'm just going to go ask people what their commitment is to helping the turtles. Mine personally, I was involved with turning my lights off on the 20th, so I turned them off for an hour between 7 and 8 on the 20th. So, Tim, what's your commitment moving forward?
Look, my commitments are going to be whenever I head down the beach, I'm going to be actively looking for pieces of litter and be picking them up and disposing of them appropriately.
There we go. Matt, what's your commitment?
The kids are pretty inspiring. I've got two young boys with a very similar approach to life, so I might try and see if they can get involved in the hatchling program.
Cara, you're up next. What's your commitment?
So we are not local. We're actually from the dry tropical, the Townsville region, and on Magnetic Island we have the Magnetic Island Turtle Group, and I'm actually going to bring a lot of the information that I've learnt here today to those that are operating on Magnetic Island and maybe apply some of the education concepts that I've learnt.
That's good. Great news. I'm glad everyone's learning. Nige, over here in the corner, you're hiding away from everyone. What's your commitment, mate?
Okay, so obviously we're further away from the coast as well, but continually promoting cleaning up litter and also just spreading the information that we learnt today.
That's great. Thank you, Nigel. Elise, the CEO of FBA over here. Just like to know what your commitment is to our beautiful turtles.
I will stop during any run and pick up any litter I find.
You'll stop in any run. You will stop. It's the stopping bit. Okay, you don't really. I think you're just looking for an excuse to stop. Does anyone else want to put up their hand to? I've got two. Everyone, yes, please, by all means, pop them on the board.
I'm going to help protect turtle habitat by making a case for improving water quality and protecting seagrass.
That is a perfect answer. Lee, now I know you've been hiding from me all day, and the previous EO, and I continue to say this, I probably always will. I've got some very big shoes to fill here, but what's your commitment to our turtles?
I'm going to tell more people about the lights, and I'm going to try and make sure that they're funded into the future.
That's some fantastic answers, and I appreciate everyone being involved with this. And hearing from these kids is pretty inspiring, as Matt said. To have such a commitment to our turtles at such a young age, and to be able to go back to their schools and talk about it. Their parents obviously talk about it, and obviously it's making a big change and helping us realise that we need to do something about it. And today is a perfect opportunity to be able to have their say. And I think the message has really come across. It really hit me in the heart when all these kids jumped up and started talking so passionately. So I will hand back over to Beth Lee to continue.
I've got a mini announcement to make. Actually, one of the passionate Team Hatchlings parents is starting with FBA as a project officer for Team Turtle CQ, and part of her role is actually to continue this Team Hatchlings work that has been started by GBRF and FBA. So give Tonya Wilson a round of applause. She is super passionate as well. That's going to make a great photo once we have lots of those eggs on there. We'll come and collect the pens later. That looks fantastic. Where's our photographer to take a photo of the finished product? Oh, yes, with the children there. That's great. Elise, you should be showing because you're very supportive of this program. Thank you, Team Hatchlings.
And thank you, Elise, for, for doing that. Thank you for Hatchlings. We're going to move to a speakers panel. So I don't know if all the Hatchlings need to run off or if they would like to stay to be part of the speakers panel. But I was going to invite all the speakers from today up to the front so that we can cover all of the questions that we didn't get to cover throughout the day. So if you're a speaker and you're still here, could I invite you to come to the front? Would you like to come up, Eva?
I think if we could have one more, just one of our team actually stay. Maybe Owen, you going to jump in there, mate? That's great. I think yourself, Matt, over here, and I go to the same hairdresser. By look at the short back and size there, mate. That's fantastic. And look, wouldn't mind one of those shirts, Bethany. They're fantastic. They are absolutely great. Oh, that's great. That's great. And I think, Tim, I don't know where he is, but I think Owen's actually tipped you off the life coach perch because he was, full of knowledge, mate. Good on you. Take it all in. Congratulations. So thank you, guys. It was fantastic and very inspiring to all.
Yeah. So I would like to throw to the audience first to see if anyone does have any questions left over from presentations. And Josh is a roving mic for any questions.
Hi, my question's about the Mars stars structures. And how long does it take from the time that the structures are put in place to see good coral growth?
So yeah, they were put down October 2022. So we've been down there for a couple of years now. Most of the cod that we put on is a hard, fast-growing coral that grows about 12 centimetres a year. So yeah, we can see over those couple of years real growth and real change.
I had a question for Sophie. It was about your, I guess, engagement strategy and bringing the landholders in. Do they come to you to participate in those programs, or do you guys go out to them and go door knocking? Like what kind of, I guess engagement strategy is involved in that? And then there was the two parts of the question is it a free program for the farmers or the landholders to be involved in? Like is all of the infrastructure and maintenance and support, capital works, I guess, included in and funded by the program, or is it a co-investment from the landholders? So it's a long one.
Great questions, thank you. Okay, I'll answer the first one first. So engagement, how do we get producers on board? I think a lot of that, our comms team do a fantastic job of storytelling and sharing the great stories of projects that we have done with landholders. Most of the time, I would say producers come to us, whether it's we're talking to them at a workshop and they get interested in what we're doing, talking to other producers. We have a couple of producer groups as well that are really great to share the opportunities that we can get. I guess it's always something that we're looking to improve is how can we reach people that aren't engaged with us so we can, spread the word a bit more. Does that answer that question enough? Yeah, cool. Then the second question was around the funding. So it varies across the programs at FBA. Some of the projects
A lot of the hill slope projects are 25% funded, so there is an in-kind contribution from the landholder, and then I guess it's based off the public versus private benefit ratio in terms of what's the sediment savings from the project, and yeah, what does the in-kind contribution need to look like from the landholder. So yeah, it varies. Some of them occasionally are 100% funded. Yeah.
I think that's a brilliant question. I actually asked Elise that exact question yesterday. So very good. Matt, you've got a question.
It's kind of maybe for Eva, maybe for the room. Matt Ellis, Queensland Government. I guess in the broader reef program, we see a process of reviewing the program, synthesizing it. We look at the improvement plan, we look at the management practices, and we revise that, and then put a strategy in place to improve it to meet our targets. Is there a plan? Eva, you touched on synthesizing information. We've got 14 years now, which is a reasonable data set. We've got a bit of an understanding of the climate, maybe not the future predictions. Do we have a point where we could synthesize that information to a so what for the catchment? How do we go from a B to a C, or how do we ensure that when we do have high rainfall events, we're not going to drop back to that C or a D?
Or I think, Matt, thanks for the question. I think or be very transparent and say that if rainfall does come about with this magnitude, increasing the flows, this will change your report card. However, this will give this will be dependent on the resilience of your system, right? So it should bounce back. So bouncing back as a process is part of resilience of waterways. Yes, I would love to think so. We've agreed with the ISP that we will, in the first part of next year, which is always the time that we step back a little bit from the whole report card process and the report card reviews and all that, that we actually step back a little bit and look at it from a strategic point of view. So I think before Lee left, we did one in Townsville where we looked at it more holistically. And this is where I think the connectivity, the connection topic came about, that report cards are good, but they're quite different to school report cards, because while we rate every catchment different, will have its own rating, the rating of one catchment is dependent on another catchment. When we get a school report card, unless you sit with somebody really, really naughty, then you do it in your own terms. So you try hard and you get it. That's probably the difference in waterway report card. We would love to think that report cards are not just for the sake of telling people what the health of a waterway is. It really should, number one, as I put there, that it should influence management. It should help focus where the actions should be done. It should also focus on it should help in terms of reviewing the design of the monitoring program, because monitoring programs cannot just stay as they are forever. They got to change. So when you heard Heath from the US talk about, with experience from Bill Dennison, they're now incorporating the social and the economic side. Gladstone's doing that now. Whether we combine it into one grade, that's a different story, because once again, the indicators are quite different, and they also change differently. So there are indicators that change over a year. There are indicators that change, 5 years, for example. So we need to rationalize, report cards should rationalize the design for what we do, but also for how we monitor. So it's not as if we increase monitoring investments all the time. We actually just have to step back and review. That's the main reason why we introduced that whole ecology side. It's needed that we can't just be monitoring water quality. We have to look at the ecology. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Just another question over here.
Hello, I'm Savannah. I am a community member and non-scientist. So just putting that disclosure out there. I had a couple of questions, and it builds on what you were saying, Eva, about having the socioeconomic environment included in the environment. I think that, as a lay person to the environmental science field, I feel like we forget that humans are nature, and we don't really monitor or include that in the science. So it'd be really interesting to see, what your thoughts are on how you would include that in the next report card. And my other question too, as a lay person, how do you find the best way to communicate science to non-science people, and what do you find like tips and tricks for scientists in the room are the best ways to do that? Are there leadership programs, that kind of thing? Because I did struggle a little bit with some of the heavier science parts, but I really see the passion, motivation from everyone too, and I think it's been really good today.
Right, before I hand over to the other science panel members, science communication is actually, I'll probably do the other way when I respond. So science communication is becoming very important. And I know in some of the programs, like the university that Bill is in, that all the postgraduate students actually have to go through a science communication course, not just because of the way they present the results, but basically it's around how they then deal with the general public or the managers, right? But there's also the other type of communication that I know at university they also impose on that one. It's how a scientist you communicate to the media, because media is quite different in communication. They could easily twist what you say. And if you're a pure scientist, that can be very hard to get out of. I've seen that happen a few times. So that's another type of communication. That's really a risk-averse type of science communication, because you try and make sure that what you say will not be twisted. Whereas what we're doing here as a partnership is really transparency, simplify, without, taking the complexity without oversimplifying. Because, kids like Owen, they could understand, that's the passion, right? So it's that one. Talking to politicians, sorry, I hope there's no politicians here. I'm going to be in a bad books here. It's once again a different style, yeah? So that's one. Sorry, now that made me forget about the first question. Oh, the socioeconomic, very important. So when you look at, and I know Rachel is here, but the department has invested in actually not necessarily integrating directly into one common report card across, but really tracking the social and the economics side. That's very important because, as I said, the definition of resilience is not just about the ecosystem, it's about the social and it's about the economics as well. We need to learn to have the three. And sorry, I have to put cultural. Cultural is as important as that. So there is a program in relation to cultural. I forgot to mention this. There is actually a very good program done in the Murray-Darling, which is around cultural flows. In environment, we talk about environmental flows. There they talk about cultural flows, which actually embraces environmental flows already. That means what are the flows of rivers that we need to protect to make sure that the cultural values are being maintained and protected. So I totally agree with you. If we can, that would be really good. So a lot of the report cards now incorporate that.
Yeah, we do have a couple of projects looking at how we can integrate human dimension with the environmental indicators. So we had one where we used a mapping platform to answering like some of the similar questions we've kind of had today around what are your values and where do you find those values. And the mapping component has been really interesting because once people have answered those questions around what their values are, we can correlate that to environmental values at a place. So we can start to make the links between what the water quality is like at a certain place and how that affects people's values. It's definitely a developing space all over the world, how we tackle integration of social and environmental information, because they're very different types of information. Like we talk about qualitative versus quantitative science. A lot of what is important to people culturally and socially is intangible. So how can you put that into numbers that you then put a grade to? It's really difficult. But one of the ways that we try to do it is through storytelling, because people can connect that. And yeah, so visit the website and look at the Waterway Stories page because they're trying to fill that gap there. Yeah.
Thank you. I've just got a question for my little short back and sides man in there, Owen. Mate, firstly, your favourite turtle, and tell us a little bit about it.
My favourite turtle's got to be the flatback, and it's just because they nest here and I've grew up with them, so they're just my favourite. And they're called a flatback because they have a flatter back than most turtles. and they nest here along local beaches here and up a little bit north and south.
And on average, how many eggs do they lay? I'm going to test you on that one, pal.
Like 30 to 60.
All right, Owen, I have another question for you, honey. I don't live on the coast at all, mainly in Rockhampton. And where I work recently, there's been a lot of turtle eggs up in the mulch area. What's your recommendation of what do I do with those eggs? Do I bury them again? Should I? I think the foxes are digging them out. What's your opinion? What should I be doing with those eggs?
I'm not probably the greatest on. I think, are they freshwater eggs?
I think so, yes.
I might have to tag Bethany in here.
Okay, my first environmental job was working with the Fitzroy River turtle, which is in Rockhampton, above the barrage where it's not salty. And there is a current monitoring program and nest protection program happening there. Kimberly Robinson is actually doing her PhD on that. So she does that work very well. She's recently discovered that echidnas can actually use their tongues to suck out the goodness of the eggs while they're in situ in the nest. So you come along and you think, oh yeah, it's a great nest here, and then you uncover it and you can see all these holes in the eggs. So if I was to find some eggs along the Fitzroy River in the freshwater part, I would not do anything with them, but you could notify the state government, Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service and partnerships, and let them know, because it may possibly be one that Kimberly has missed, but she honestly is very good at not missing them.
That's exactly what you would have said, Owen, isn't it? Yeah, perfect. Tim.
Thanks, Josh. So, just a couple of questions. One for Keppel Dive and water sports. So, in the presentation that you gave us here, you showed us some interesting graphs where there was sort of sea temperature and sort of coral bleaching effects, and I was just sort of like interested to sort of understand, you know, from a business perspective, whether those sort of bleaching events and things like that, how that actually goes through and sort of impacts, you know, your business and that. I mean, is it something that, you know, you all of a sudden, you know, we connecting environmental situations or environmental events to actual sort of, you know, direct economic impacts?
It's a good question. We went through, as Jen was describing before, and we went through before earlier with the doctor, we went through a massive bleaching event. It lasted through from December through to February. Temperatures got up over 30 degrees on some days. But it's the messaging that's the important one. The most important thing that we can do is consistency and continuity in our messaging. And we get that messaging, we collect the data, we stay on track, we provide that data in a consistent and continuous manner, regardless of what the weather looks like. Some days we're going out on beautiful days and it looks fantastic, just like the pictures, and others it's absolutely hellacious. But we're committed to actually getting that data in the right time and the right data to the right people so that they can react in time, on time, to get us the messaging very quickly back, so there can be continuity in that messaging to the general public. We get a lot of people that come up to the hut and, you know, they'll want to know and they're interested, and so they should be. It's a big issue. But you know, we were talking about different types of messaging just before, whether it's on social media, and everyone's a journo these days. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's got an iPhone, and away they go. So, unfortunately, and you know, fortunately as well, we get some messaging, and we have a meeting about it. And we go, guys, listen, you know, let's leave the passion and everything out of it. And they're professionals in what they do, and we give the same sort of messaging out that comes from the professionals that we provide the data to. So it is interesting what you hear, and then what we provide back. And sometimes we get interesting, you know, information back from the scientists and that as well. There are some interesting characters out there, but they do rely on us, and this is why the importance of this program is it's one of the best schemes I've ever come across. I've been in engineering and mining and in diving and environmental stuff for years, and all over the world, and it's really interesting the messaging that you sort of get back, what you've got to provide back to the public, so that the messaging at the end of the day is clear and concise and factual. Yeah, that's the big one. You've got to stay on top of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, sort of trying to navigate that sort of thing when like an event like coral bleaching, it's not something you have direct control over as well. So yeah, it's hard to navigate that.
Yeah, and you talk about the economic impact of it, and it's real. Tourism is a fickle beast, and it's important that the messaging has got to be accurate, it's got to be correct, so that we're providing, because it's not all bad. We work very closely with AIMS. As soon as that bleaching event took place, they were on top straight away. AIMS got into contact with us. We were out there doing over and above monitoring in, Jesus, that was bad conditions. That was awful. Yeah, so it was over a week period. We donated our time, our energy into getting out there, getting into the water, getting the data back to them as quickly as they could, so that messaging could be consistent and accurate. And they provide report cards to us and fact sheets and all the rest of it. So it was very well handled. The Grumpa guys and the AIMS guys do an amazing job, but you've got to get on top of that because it can affect you from an economic perspective as well. Yeah, you've just got to be factual.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Carl. Sorry, I was just going to say, it's amazing what you read on the print family sometimes, and probably local Facebook forums. But I agree with you with what you're saying about the social media. It's amazing what you can read on there. Sorry, Beth, go ahead.
That's okay. I had a question for, I guess, all the community science groups and rooms. How would you like to see the work that you do be involved or become more involved in decision making?
It's a good question, and we do talk about it a lot, and regardless of whether you're in citizen science, data collection, or the provision of data, we all want the same outcome. We all want the data to be correct, we want it to be accurate, we want it to be responsible, so that the right people can make responsible decisions based on the correct agendas. There's we're coming into an election right now. You only need to jump on ABC radio or jump on the TV, and all it is a lot of political point scoring and their own personal benefit, that they come up with the incorrect or answers to outcomes that we're trying to bend from. So I think that it's going to take just strong leadership. We can provide the data, and we should be getting in partnership with large groups, so that the large influential groups, and I see that there's numerous ones up on the board there, that we can really make true change if we've got good leaders aligning and creating the balance and having everyone pull in the same direction, as opposed to either far right or far left. But,
How would you like to see the work that you do?
I just like to see that our work is paying off and that light pollution on the beaches are going down and less hatchlings are being found on the beaches, and that there's more hatchlings in the ocean and have a better chance of survival.
I'm going to be the president one day, young man, I can tell you that. I've just got a question back here from Kim. I've got time for maybe one more. Okay.
I think Mick might have kind of covered what I was going to ask Ellen, but it sounds like you guys are doing some really cool monitoring with your light meters. You said that you guys target some education to areas where the lighting is high, to local houses and residents. I was just wondering how you go about that education for those areas and what kind of results you're getting.
So for the houses there, we do letterbox drops with our flyers, and then for the kids, so that they tell their parents, we do school talks and kindergarten talks and all that sort of talks. Does that cover it?
Do you think it's working?
I reckon it's working. It slowly is paying off, but I reckon we could do more.
I'm just going to throw back to Cara over here. We have a question. Oh, go for it, mate. You go for it. This could get interesting.
So at school we've been monitoring like temperatures and getting a daily week. It's been picking up a lot, and how's that affecting the coral?
We've been actually watching the temperatures go down. So our continuous data that we've been sort of collecting and picking up with our tourism weeklies and RISs, but at the same time we started from a very poor benchmark. So we've started from the, coming into out of summer, it's dropped down, but we are going to see just through the climate, the season of where we are right now, we are going to see temperatures slowly rise, which is natural. What we don't want is extreme events. That's what we're trying to, this is what all this is all about. So, the work that you're doing, the work that everyone's doing, and the talks that we've heard today, what we're trying to do at the end of the day, the data's got to go through, the decisions have to be made, and hopefully that we don't see those extreme weather events moving forward.
But you're right, we've had another hot summer, and we're seeing more and more of those extreme events as the years go on because of climate change. And of course, what happens out during a heat wave out on coral reefs is that the corals, when water gets too hot, they're symbiotic algae that live in the corals start producing a toxin, and so the corals expel the algae and they bleach, they go white. If that goes on for too long, if the water stays too hot for too long, then the coral will die. If it cools down quick enough, they can reabsorb the algae and recover. But we do see the reefs recover between bleaching events, even some of the quite severe mass bleaching event that we've had. There's been regrowth and recovery if you get a few cooler years after that. But because the climate's continuing to get hotter, we're seeing those big heat waves more and more often, and eventually, if that means they don't get as much time to recover between, and if they're hit by other things like poor water quality or sediments and things like that, then they will gradually be going downhill. We're working on some interventions, though. What we really need to do is fix climate change to stop that. But in the meantime, we're working on, well, what else can we do to help corals deal better with higher temperatures.
I'm just going super quick. This is to Owen and everyone from Team Hatchlings. Have you ever done a targeted discussion with council or developers in the region about their planning for light infrastructure on new developments or developments that are along the coastlines? I just see a really big opportunity for you guys to get into the executive leadership teams or the planning and development teams of local council and pull at their heartstrings a little bit.
So we've done a little bit with Capricorn Conservation Council, but that's the only sort of council that I sort of know of. So Bethany.
No, we haven't really used the hatchlings to speak to council. It would be very powerful, wouldn't it? Great idea, Tonya. And another thing about the heat, it's not only killing corals, it's killing turtle hatchlings. So we had several nests that didn't hatch at all because they were essentially cooked in their nests. So that's pretty tragic. And that happened on our beaches just near here.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for the answers. A round of applause for everyone, please. Just to wrap up and close up, cap everything off today. First, I'd like to thank all the partners of us here. You can see them on here today. Without you guys, we wouldn't be here. Potential new partners coming into it. I look forward to meeting you all, having a great chat and bringing you on board. Obviously seen today, it's a great initiative and just goes to show many people in the room really support what we're doing. We're very passionate what we do. So thank you. Obviously everyone is passionate in this room, so it's great to see. Our community members, kids, I think we'd probably give them another round of applause actually, they're fantastic. I'd also give further thanks to, and a lot of this probably wouldn't have happened today, definitely wouldn't have happened today without Marketing Mafia, Tracy and Bella, who are here today. So thank you very much. Lily and Lotus, the decorations in conjunction with Marketing Mafia. They've set out all these tables. They've done a fantastic job, so thank you. Bitplex, Fred, and our IT Scott over here in the corner. Thank you very much. Our independent science panel, thank you very much. You've done an amazing job to help us out in producing these reports, and we look forward to continuing that great work moving forward. So thank you. Our management committee, our partnership management committee, thank you very much for welcoming me in personally. It's been great to deal with you all, and again, I'm looking forward to the future with you. We've got some great things we're going to work towards, and I'm looking, into the future with Tim and what we can bring to the table. And I think what we're going to produce over the next 12, 18 months is going to be something that every partner on that board is going to get on board with and be really passionate about. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. Our chairman, Tim, thank you. You continue to make those phone calls to me and inspire me to just be a better person, actually. Jeez, I'm like I'm speaking at best man's wedding or something. Best man. But no, thank you for your support. It's overwhelming. And to our hosts, FBA, thank you. You continue to do an amazing job. So thank you. And finally, and I thanked these two earlier today, but to Eva and Miff, who again, today wouldn't have happened without them two being involved. I can stand up here and say that I had a truckload to do with it. Well, to be honest, I've only been in the job 4 months. It's these two that really ran this. You should be proud of yourselves, proud of the way you conducted yourselves today. And again, I look forward to continue working with you two, so thank you very much. Again, thanks for attending today. There is some merchandise up the back, there's a few hats, so I hope to see nearly everyone if there's enough wearing one on the way out. And tomorrow, if you're attending the dive, that'd be great. Sun Smart, it's always good. Can also request the partners representatives here today will get a photo just over here in front of this board. We might drag those balloons over here. And we'll also get a management committee photo, so if we can hang around for that. Now, the bus for the cocktail party, which I know everyone is busting to get to, and Tim has to get home to do his hair, so I won't hold you up too long. The bus will be leaving at 6. Sorry, mate. I had to get back at you somehow. The bus will be leaving at 6:15, so we'll be leaving from Barry Street, which is just out the back here. So you just go down the stairs, and the bus will be waiting at 6:15. No later. It's a long walk out there. Or the e-scooters. You could use the e-scooters. And But yeah, arriving out there at 6:30, that's when we'll kick off. Tim will give his chairman's address out there as well, which I'm really looking forward to hearing. He's a very passionate man. So again, thank you all. Thanks for putting up with my voice today, and I look forward to seeing you all next year. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, tomorrow. Forgot about that. It's a long swim, isn't it? Tomorrow, if we can be at where are we meeting? At Keppel Bay Marina at 7. Sorry, 6:30. We're leaving at 7. So be there at 6:30 to leave at 7. So yeah, sorry, Carl, you're not getting another half hour in bed, mate.
Yeah, so 6:30 at the small wharf near the Waterline restaurant, which is where Keppel Connections take their ferries from. Familiar with that? Also, any divers who hadn't filled out the form, if you haven't filled out, you can't come tomorrow. So please fill it out or come see me.
Thanks, guys. We'll just go to our partner representatives up the front. We'll just quickly do those photos now, followed by the management committee, please.